A sweet, ordinary-looking couple held an earth-shattering secret. The husband was from an immortal clan with super healing abilities, while the wife was from a shape-shifting clan. She could transform into animals. Neither of them knew about the other's race when they married and had their son, Kwang X, who was just an ordinary university student. But 2 years ago, Kwang X's mother suddenly told him she could shapeshift, leaving him so stunned and disbelieving that he asked if she could turn into Sailor Moon. Or maybe a magical girl, but after his mother gave him a demonstration, Kwang X was instantly convinced. He also learned that his own shapeshifter blood would awaken that very night. Kwang X couldn't believe something so important was only being told to him now. As he was trying to mentally prepare himself, his mother told him with a serious face, "Don't you dare tell your father about this." Stunned, he agreed with his mother. Then one day, 2 years later, while Kwang X was out grocery shopping with his dad, his father suddenly said they needed to talk. Kwang X assumed it was about his studies. Who would have thought his dad would seriously tell him that he was from an immortal clan, leaving him utterly terrified? Are you two playing some kind of mind game with your own son? But why could both his parents reveal such important matters so casually? Although his dad also warned Kwang X, "Don't tell your mother." Kwang X wasn't entirely convinced, because immortals are usually exceptionally good-looking, and no matter how he looked at himself, he couldn't see that trait. His father comforted Kwang X, saying, "Today is your 24th birthday. At 11 o'clock tonight, your immortal blood will awaken. You'll know then." After that, he once again warned Kwang X not to tell his mother. Still baffled, Kwang X agreed. Although he couldn't understand why his parents had to hide their true identities from each other, Kwang X still mentally accepted them for who they were. But, having gone through one awakening 2 years prior, he specifically asked his father if the awakening process was painful. His father, however, casually replied, "It's not very painful. You'll just feel your blood getting very hot. It cools down after a little while," so he told Kwang X not to worry. When they got home, his mother had meticulously prepared a warm birthday party for him. Lying in his bedroom, he watched the clock approach 11 o'clock, thinking about whether he could really awaken as an immortal, after already having awakened as a shapeshifter. What if the awakening wasn't successful? How would he explain that to his father? A giant question mark filled Kwang X's little heart. And then, 11 o'clock arrived. An excruciating pain spread throughout his entire body. The agony was intense. It left Kwang X unable to utter a single word. He remembered what his father had told him on the way home, furious that his dad had lied to him. Kwang X's father was an immortal with powerful healing abilities, while his mother was a shapeshifter. She could transform into various animals. Kwang X had inherited the gifts of the world's most powerful bloodlines, but awakening this talent caused all his hair to fall out, all the blood in his body to vanish, and at the same time, his bones broke piece by piece. However, after enduring the side effects of awakening his gift, Kwang X would be transformed into a completely new person. Not only would all his hair grow back anew, but he would also gain a powerful physique and fair skin. Even all 5 of his senses became abnormally sensitive. The most agonizing part was hearing strange sounds every night. As Kwang X was stressing over this, his mother suddenly called him for breakfast. His breakfast was more lavish than usual, with not just 4 savory dishes and a soup, but generous portions of everything. While they were eating, his father suddenly told him to prepare for the civil service exam, surprising both Kwang X and his mother. The reason his father suggested this was because, in times of peace, immortals were managed by the government. But Kwang X's mother didn't want her son to take the civil service exam. That's because 2 years ago, after his first awakening, she had decided that after Kwang X finished university, she would arrange a job for him at a large company with ties to the shapeshifter clan. But since she didn't want his father to know she was a shapeshifter, she could only use the excuse that Kwang X still had school to refuse the idea. This left Kwang X baffled. Although he knew very well that both his parents wanted to find him a comfortable job, this was the first time he'd ever seen them disagree. So Kwang X happily ate his meal while watching his parents argue. Just then, his parents looked straight at him. It turned out they wanted him to decide whether to continue his studies or take the civil service exam. Kwang X didn't want to choose either. Instead, he said he wanted to join the Navy. This statement immediately silenced his parents. His mother glared at Kwang X, full of killing intent, as if she was displeased with his decision. But after thinking for a moment, his father supported Kwang X's decision. Hearing this, Kwang X's spirits lifted. He thought he was one step closer to his dream, but unexpectedly, his father changed his tune. "You can join the Marines, but you have to take the civil service exam first." He added that if Kwang X passed, he could help him defer his post to enlist in the Marines. Moreover, it could even get you extra points. After thinking for a moment, Kwang X agreed. It wasn't for any other reason than the fact that his father had been a civil servant for many years. So, listening to his dad probably wasn't a bad idea. Besides, he could still join the Marines just a little later. After his father heard Kwang X agree to take the civil service exam, he said he could find him a tutor to help him pass quickly. The only catch was that Kwang X would need to go to Transformation City for special training every Saturday. The person training him was also one of his father's subordinates. this so-called training, Gay, was actually to hone Kwang X's immortal body. The trainer looked at his muscular physique with doubt, because immortals were usually physically weaker than normal people. Only Kwang X knew it was due to his mother's shapeshifter blood, but the trainer, unaware, just assumed it was the result of working out. The two of them quickly entered the training ground. Seeing the ground covered in sharp blades, Kwang X tensed up. He had no idea what kind of training his father had prepared for him, but the trainer didn't start the session for Kwang X. Instead, he started explaining to him why immortals have such powerful healing abilities. First, because an immortal's physical strength is good, their healing ability will also be strong. Second, the more sensitive one's perceptive abilities are, the more levels of pain they can feel. From there, you can identify the location of your injuries, so their training will focus on these two aspects. Although Kwang X understood what the trainer was saying, he didn't understand what the mountain of blades behind him was for. The trainer revealed a sinister smile. He said it was for him to train his body and at the same time learn how to become an immortal. Kwang X was a bit bewildered. "I'm taking the civil service exam. I shouldn't be learning this stuff." "What exam?" The trainer was also bewildered. "Your dad told me you were joining the Immortal Special Forces." Kwang X was completely dumbfounded. "I've never even heard of that." But he knew he had to complete this test. Only then could he become a Marine. So he had no choice but to agree. You would never have guessed that Kwang X, wearing purple polka dot shorts, would have to walk barefoot onto this mountain of blades. The trainer even told him to run a little faster. Then a series of blood-curdling screams reached his ears. Kwang X's legs were covered in blood, but the trainer could still guess from the bloodstains on the blades that he had intentionally skipped a few blades in the middle. However, he couldn't criticize Kwang X. On the contrary, he praised his motor skills. Kwang X's healing ability also astonished the trainer. Normally, a newly awakened immortal would never have such a powerful healing ability. After hearing that, Kwang X was about to take a rest when the trainer unexpectedly told him to run a few more laps while he was still injured, and that he was not allowed to continue avoiding the blades. "It's best if you stomp hard enough to break your leg." This utterly shocked him. Kwang X never expected the person his father found to be so cruel. After that, he ran non-stop. Kwang X's super strong healing ability also shocked the trainer. He never expected that the person his superior had assigned him to train would be so gifted. But Kwang X was starting to find this self-torture unbearable. So he asked how much longer he had to train. The trainer replied that he had to train until he passed out. Each time he passed out, his pain threshold would increase. Running on blades was to help Kwang X not to faint or feel too much pain on the battlefield. It was horrifying. Then he asked Kwang X, "You're not dizzy yet?" But he knew that with this type of training, Kwang X might never pass out, because the blood of a shapeshifter was too powerful. So he asked, "Is there any other way to pass this round?" The trainer thought for a moment and said, "As long as you can run across the mountain of blades in 6 seconds, you'll pass." Hearing this, Kwang X smiled. Although he could run it in 6 seconds before, he hadn't used his full strength yet. Even though running like that would be incredibly painful, Kwang X would try to ignore the sensation. That way, if he ran with all his might, it would definitely take less than 6 seconds. Seeing Kwang X run like a madman, the trainer's eyes widened. But seeing him panting after finishing, he yelled at Kwang X to run again. But this wasn't because Kwang X took longer than 6 seconds, but because he had forgotten to count the seconds. If the first round was a mountain of blades, the second was even more absurd. "Kwang X, take this." Kwang X quickly grabbed the rope and, with a confused look on his face, asked, "What is this, a dog leash?" Gyeonggi quickly replied, "You'll need it for the second training exercise. Put it around your neck." Hearing this, Kwang X obeyed. He commented, "This doesn't feel comfortable. What are we going to do?" Hearing this, Gyeonggi replied, "Breath-holding training." The words left Kwang X frozen on the spot. His body trembling, he stammered, "Then this is—" The man cut in. "That's right." Gyeonggi held up a remote in his hand. He explained, "When I press this button, your neck will be constricted." He continued, "Don't take it off. Put it back on. You've already run on a path of blades. You're not just going to go home now, are you?" Hearing those words, Kwang X slumped to the ground in anger. He exclaimed in frustration, "Couldn't you just have me hold my breath underwater to practice?" Hearing that, the man replied, "You think that's enough? This training is also about enduring strangulation. If you pass out during a fight, you're done for." Gyeonggi continued to explain to him, "Just like with the blade exercise, you're focusing a lot on passing out. After horrifying years of war against special species, normal people have learned how to face us. But shouldn't the reverse also be true?" He suddenly let out a sigh and said, "We used to train by hanging ourselves from trees. The world is getting better." Hearing this, Kwang X cursed silently in his head. "Don't say it's getting better based on something like that." He gave a slight smile and asked, "What's the condition for passing?" Gyeonggi replied, "There is none. You will pass out, but you should be able to endure for at least 5 minutes." Hearing this, he replied calmly, "5 minutes, got it." The man continued his explanation. "Furthermore, I recommend you don't try to force the collar off or steal the remote unless you want a hole in your chest. However, that could also be a form of training. Hearing this, Kwang X said firmly, "Understood." Instead, Gyeonggi asked him a question. "So are you ready?" Kwang X replied, "Yes." Gyeonggi pressed the remote. "All right, let's begin." His groans echoed endlessly. Kwang X clutched the ground in agony as the collar around his neck slowly tightened. His face turned pale from suffocation. Kwang X struggled on the ground, looking pained. His trembling hand slowly reached for the collar on his neck. Gyeonggi approached and sharply struck his hand with a stick. He warned, "I see you can still hold on." Gyeonggi walked away. "But if not, then you just have to collapse right there." He was in immense pain, his whole body trembling as he cursed silently. Anxious, Kwang X wondered, when will this be over? I'm sure it's been more than 5 minutes already. His vision started to blur, his consciousness fading. His face was etched with exhaustion. Then, having reached his limit, he collapsed onto the ground. The collar immediately loosened. Kwang X jolted awake. Gyeonggi, holding the controller, muttered, "What the? Why'd it turn off?" His eyes held a dangerous glint. Could it be the battery died? The collar was quickly removed. Kwang X gasped for air, silently cursing Gyeonggi. "I almost died," he replied. "You won't die." Breathing heavily, his face pale and tired, Kwang X said, "Just because I didn't pass out doesn't mean we're going to do this again. One more time, right? I'm sure I lasted more than 5 minutes." Hearing this, Gyeonggi held up the stopwatch in his hand and said, "That's right, to be more precise." His words startled him. 12 minutes and 41 seconds. Hearing this, Kwang X was completely bewildered, thinking, didn't he say the record was 8 minutes? Should I complain about this? He said quietly, Gyeonggi looked at him with pride. Seeing this, Kwang X pleaded, "Please, don't look at me like a kid who just got a new toy." In a flash, it was afternoon. Inside the house, Gyeonggi's voice rang out, "All right, time to rest. You have to eat." Hearing that, he replied, "Are you going to cook for me?" He quickly answered, "Nothing's effective when you're hungry. Your brain needs fuel, too." Kwang X peeked his head from behind the door and asked, "Can I help with anything?" He replied instantly, "Just stay put, that's all." Hearing that, he sighed in relief, thinking to himself, "Well, it's not like I know how to cook. All I have to do is stay put." A horrifying-looking meal was quickly served. His voice was sly as he said, "Here, eat." Kwang X's eyes widened in shock. He stammered, "What's in this?" Gyeonggi asked back, "Do you want to know?" He replied, "Not really." Soon, evening came. Kwang X was outside, wringing his clothes dry. He stood by the stream, lost in thought. Next time, I'm definitely the one cooking. When I get back home, I should learn how to cook from Mom. Kwang X then thought, no, first I need to ask Dad about this. I should call Dad right now, but I'm not allowed to use a phone, so mine was confiscated. He grabbed a rock and pulled himself onto the bank. His exhausted voice cut through the air. So tired. Can't I at least get a decent night's sleep? He was met with a bare, simple room. Kwang X froze. A mosquito buzzed past his face, and he swatted it out of the air. He then called out, "Hey, teacher!" He then asked, "Are there no lights in here?" Hearing him, he replied, "If there were lights, the bugs would come in. It's not that unbearable." Kwang X could only reply helplessly, Gyeonggi quickly lay down with a tired sigh. Kwang X also slowly lay down in his designated spot. He then began to explain, "This is to train your sense of touch. A keen sense of touch will make you feel more on edge than others. The first time, you definitely won't be able to sleep a wink, because the feeling is so unsettling." Gyeonggi turned to look, then shot up. Seeing Kwang X sleeping soundly, he exclaimed, "Heh, for crying out loud." His voice rang out, "Hey, wake up, breakfast time!" A dark, mysterious meal appeared before him. Kwang X could only sigh wearily and reply, "Thanks for the food." He grabbed a chicken leg and started tearing into it, explaining, "Immortals need a lot of energy. Eat." Hearing this, he replied, "Okay." He asked, "What's the training for today?" He replied instantly, "Cliff diving." Confused, Kwang X asked again, "Is that something really hard?" Gyeonggi quickly explained, "Holding your breath in midair, controlling your senses for the coming impact." While eating, Kwang X asked, "So based on yesterday's and today's training, the thing an immortal should be most wary of in a fight is the shock and pressure from a powerful impact that knocks you out, right?" He glanced over and answered, "That's right. And one more thing. You have to be wary of losing mobility when your legs are severed. That's why your arms are an immortal's shield." He continued to explain, "Using your hands to block someone's strike. An attack that leaves you no time to react. For example, if they aim for your head or your legs." Gyeonggi's stern voice continued, "Also, you should be more wary of knives than guns. You also have to watch out for the clay and the mines." Hearing his words, I sighed wearily and replied, "All right, I get it. Such outdated examples. These days, enemies come from other worlds." Annoyed by how I was eating, he yelled, "What are you picking at? Hurry up and eat so we can get back to training." My horrifying days of arduous training began. Kwang X was pushed off a cliff, just like that. "Jump now!" I was forced to run for training. In a flash, the time was up. I had completed all the training sessions, and the next day, I took a bus home. Kwang X quickly made a call. The other end picked up immediately, and a voice rang out. "Hey, son!" Hearing this, he quickly replied, "Dad, did I really come to the right place?" Hearing this, the other end replied, "Why? Did something happen?" Kwang X let out a weary sigh and answered, "That guy made me jump off a mountain." Ho quickly replied, "Son, that's nothing. You're an immortal. You won't die that easily. That means you can be harsh with your body." He continued to explain, "That's how you find your own limits." Hearing his father's words, he silently contemplated everything he had discovered. My body really is durable. After all, I haven't passed out there even once. Ho spoke reassuringly. "In any case, you did well. Go home and get some rest, okay?" I then asked, "So what's going to be on the exam?" Ho muttered, "About that." Suddenly, his mother's voice rang out. "Sobi, I need help!" "I've got to go," his dad said. "We'll talk later, okay?" With that, he hung up. Seeing this, Kwang X thought to himself, "Well, it's not like hearing about it would change anything anyway. I'll just rest like Dad said." Images of relaxation immediately filled his mind as he thought about going home. I'll take a bath, have fun playing games, play my PS, lie down refreshed, enjoy a delicious meal cooked by Mom, have a good night's sleep, and just sleep in my own room forever. Not a single mosquito for 20 hours. His face was full of bliss as he thought to himself, "That's right, a perfect place to rest." Kwang X's mom spoke up, "You can bathe later. Let's go somewhere with your mother." The blissful moments instantly vanished into thin air. He froze on the spot as Seon-hee brought out a suitcase and pushed him out of the house. She urged him on, "I've already talked to your father. You should still go to college. I've already packed your things for you." He panicked and shouted, "I can study on my own. Wait a minute. A suitcase?" What she said next made him freeze on the spot. "I found a tutor not too far from our house, just in the neighborhood." He was confused by what his mother was explaining. "You'll go there and stay overnight for 2 days. I'm just letting you know in advance." Kwang X panicked, thinking to himself, "What? I have a bad feeling about this." Seon-hee quickly pressed the elevator button. She said, "I'll come pick you up in 2 days." Seeing that he was going alone, he asked, "Aren't you coming in to introduce me? Aren't we here to meet the tutor?" Hearing that, she replied, "It's fine." Confused by her words, he asked again, "Huh? What do you mean?" Seon-hee gave him a scheming look and said, "Just being smart isn't enough." As the elevator doors slowly closed, she smiled brightly. "You also need a healthy body." The door slammed shut in that instant. At that moment, I realized everything that was waiting for me. Kwang X stood frozen at the unfolding situation. It was never going to be about some college studies. He laughed out loud in misery. In his mind, he cursed, "This damn family." The elevator panel showed floor B1. The elevator had reached the bottom floor. The doors slowly opened, and Kwang X stood inside with a worried look in his eyes. He glanced around, staring at the objects inside the room. "Are these dozens of weights lined up neatly? A gym?" Surprised, Kwang X exclaimed, "Did they renovate the parking garage?" Suddenly, someone appeared and said, "So, it's you." He was astonished by her appearance. Jui grabbed his wrist tightly and asked, "You're Sungya's son, aren't you?" Hearing that, he stammered in response, Yes, that's me. But I don't know why my mother brought me here." Julie replied, "She said you've been studying for 2 days straight, right?" She then said, "Your body will go to waste if you don't use your brain." Kwang X thought about what had happened, his face filled with fear. I can't even tell her the truth. So unfair. An image of Kwang X, terrified of his mother's presence, flashed through his mind. Ever since I was little, Mom's parenting philosophy was incredibly simple. If you don't listen, you get a beating. You have to take responsibility for your mistakes. His mother's familiar face, with her gentle smile, was looking at him. Naturally, one starts to absorb it. The two of them stood in a ring, facing off against each other. If I defy Mom, I'll be beaten black and blue. Back to reality. He let out a sigh and thought to himself, "There's no point in refusing, is there?" I could tell just by looking at this instructor. Suddenly, she held a watch-like device towards him. "Here, take it." Kwang X, confused, spoke up. "I have a complex about receiving things like this." "What is it?" Julie replied. "It's just a device with a bunch of measurement tools. Put one on your wrist and one on your ankle." Kwang X obeyed, quickly putting them on. He then spoke up. "Are you planning on training me?" She quickly cut him off. "You have to take a test first." Not understanding, he asked again, "What kind of test?" At that, Julie pointed behind her. Then she pointed to the treadmill and ordered, "Run!" He got on the treadmill. Kwang X started running as Julie instructed. She held a phone in her hand, her tone dripping with disdain. "I heard you don't train on your own." Julie delivered a critical blow. "How pathetic. Your heart rate is stable, so your hardware is good. But is this really all you can do after all this time?" Annoyed by the situation, Kwang X thought to himself, "Why am I being bullied like this? What happened to my PS5 and rest time?" Julie sighed, then quickly berated him. "So lazy. It's because the world already gives you everything you want, isn't it?" Hearing those words, Kwang X wondered, aren't we around the same age? He began to reason in his head. Immortals and shifters age slowly. So is she older than she looks? Kwang X spoke up. "How much longer do I have to run?" Hearing him, Julie yelled in annoyance, "Hey, don't you stop!" "Huh? Run?" She began to warm up her shoulders and explained, "First is cardio. Let's slowly upgrade that body of yours." With a confident look, she declared, "I'm going to rebuild you from head to toe." Kwang X seemed not to understand what was happening. After a long silence, he spoke up, dejected. "I don't want another mother." Hearing that, Julie laughed and said, "Because your son he has son? You seem to like joking." Hearing her words, he thought to himself, "I'm not joking." It was now late evening. The clock in the room ticked on and on. Kwang X was still running on the machine. Julie said in a bored tone, "Don't stop. Even my grandmother wouldn't get tired after running for just a little while." She then asked for the time. Drenched in sweat, he struggled to answer. 10. Kwang X answered while still running. 14 hours, 4 minutes, and 30 seconds. He was horrified by the situation. "I had to run all night without a break. Even training for Immortals has breaks." Julie walked around from behind him and explained, "Do you think you can fight by just trusting the body your parents gave you? Without training, that's just amateur level." She then said, "Listen and watch. This is flexibility. We'll practice it later. Take notes." Kwang X didn't understand what was happening and thought, "What the hell? How can a human body bend like that?" She continued to explain, "You have to train your flexibility. A stiff body has many disadvantages." Hearing that, he wondered to himself, what disadvantages? He thought to himself as he ran, "I want to ask that question, but I'm completely out of breath. Even with a shifter's body, running for 14 hours straight leaves me breathless." Julie asked for the time. He quickly answered, 14:10, and I have to constantly keep track of the time in case she asks. A video appeared on the screen. On top of that, I have to memorize the video in front of me. Julie continuously explained theories to him. Kwang X was completely bewildered and listening to the instructor's directions. This training is too brutal. His eyes were filled with determination. "But I can't take it!" His panicked voice rang out. "Senses? What?" Gyeong spoke up to explain, "It seems you're quite skilled at blocking your senses. But that's not enough. If too many senses are disabled, your movements will become chaotic." He pointed to himself and said, "Clear your mind. Think about the sense you want to block, and at the same time, make your other senses more precise. In other words, you need to learn how to use multiple senses." Kwang X ran, panting with exhaustion while keeping track of the time, his eyes filled with determination, memorizing the movements in the video, listening closely to the teacher's instructions, and running. While running, Kwang X calculated in his head and realized these were 4 different tasks. But my body's task of running and the instructions from the video don't happen at the same time. If I set aside my sense of timing, performing the other tasks isn't actually that difficult. The ticking of the clock echoed as Kwang X counted down the final beats. 54. 55. In the silent room, only his voice could be heard. 56. 57. The time on the clock passed quickly. 58. 59. His body exhausted, he exclaimed, 24 hours! The treadmill training session is over. It's finally over. Yes. Julie held her phone, a proud look on her face. Your brain is pretty impressive. She then gave an order. Time to stretch. You have to make your body flexible. Yes. Julie then asked, Do you remember the video we watched? I'll demonstrate, so just follow my lead. With that, she quickly knelt down. Her body then twisted backwards in a circle as he stood there watching, completely astonished. Is that cheating? How can a body be that flexible? She then commanded, Now you try. Yes. Kwang X quickly tried to practice, but his body trembled, unable to bend. Julie told him, Don't push yourself too hard. Flexibility takes time. She continued to explain, We'll increase your range of motion little by little by repeating one pose every single day. To put it simply, we're going to slowly tear your muscle fibers. Hearing those words, he thought to himself, So, healing after tearing the muscle fibers is how I increase my flexibility. Kwang X took a slow, deep breath. Then, I don't have to do it little by little, do I? Because an immortal heals very quickly after being injured. And with that, Kwang X forcefully bent his body backward. I just have to endure the pain for a moment. Julie was horrified by his action. She cried out, Are you okay? He replied, Yeah. Julie scolded him. I told you not to push yourself too hard. Who taught you to be so disobedient, huh? He suddenly grinned, looking at Julie with confident eyes. But I did it, didn't I? Hearing that, she let out a sigh and replied, Humph, you really are an interesting guy. She then announced, That's enough for today. Now let's eat. A giant pork leg appeared in front of him. Stunned by the sight of it, Kwang X asked, Are we eating a whole pig? She cheerfully pointed a hand at it and replied, Nope, that one's mine. Another pork leg appeared. And this one is yours. He was shocked by the situation. We're each eating an entire pig? Julie skillfully put on her gloves and said confidently, Eating is part of the training too. Get used to storing enough energy for the next training session every time you eat. Hearing her say that, he asked helplessly, Are you a bear that just woke up from hibernation? The two of them immediately began to devour the 2 large pork legs. She instructed him, When you're done eating, don't clean up, just leave it. 2 days a week is too short. It's not even enough time to get to the main event. He replied, Yes, ma'am. His mind filled with joy as he thought, "This is delicious. It's just a roasted pig with some simple seasoning. How can it taste this good?" He then mused, "Maybe it's because I ran all day without eating or drinking anything. But still, it's seriously delicious." She spoke up. "Eat every last bite. If you leave anything behind, you're dead." He quickly answered, "I was taught not to waste food since I was a child." Then, after a while, Julie left. She reminded him, "I'm heading in now. When you're done eating, remember to take a shower and go to sleep." He sat in the empty room, a dejected look on his face. Struggling like this is still way better than sleeping in the forest and getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. He picked up his phone. "Also, unlike with Master Gyeonggi, I'm allowed to use my phone here. Should I call my mom?" Thinking this, Kwang X quickly made the call. The other end picked up. "Mom?" Seon-hee's voice came through the line. "Son, how are you? Are you doing okay?" Hearing those words, he thought helplessly, "She sends me away like this and she's actually worried about me?" Kwang X replied, "There's no way I'm okay." His mom said, "I've told her many, many times not to go easy on you just because she knows us." She expressed concern. "But I'm still so worried." He didn't understand and asked, "What? Why?" Shun-hai replied, "If she's going too easy on you, make sure to tell her to be even harder on you, okay? Can you do that, son? Your father is here now, I have to go." He froze at their attitude. "But Mom, aren't you worried about your own son at all?" After the second day of training, I realized something. If the training for an immortal consists of insane acts, then the training for a shapeshifter consists of acts of pure human stupidity. How many kilos can a person possibly lift on a barbell anyway? What's the maximum number of reps one can do in a single set? And so, a grueling training journey for Kwang X and Julie began. "You can do it just one more time. I'm going to die." Understanding and finding a way to overcome your own limits is the core of this training, and science is a key component added to the shapeshifter's regimen. They use a lot of electronic devices and equipment. The Immortals' training also used equipment to try and crush me. Anyway, this is the conclusion I've come to during this training. And that is, Julie sighed in frustration, criticizing his poor reflexes. She held out a barbell towards him and said, "Lift this." Seeing it, Kwang X thought to himself, 20 kilograms on each side, plus the bar. That's a total of 60 kilograms. Kwang X quickly grabbed the barbell and lifted it with ease. Lifting it is no problem. A shapeshifter's strength is 3 times the average strength of a normal man. Julie spoke up, ordering, "Carry it and follow me." The two of them walked up the stairs. She pointed forward and said, "Now run with it." He let out a surprised, "Huh?" She ordered sternly, "Run." Kwang X froze at the sight before him. "Run?" he said aloud. "Here? Is this the second insane exercise after that blade thing?" And she continued to explain. "Balance your body. You must always feel your center of gravity and use your reflexes to handle everything else." Kwang X hesitated and asked, "Can I really do this?" Julie said firmly, "Just do it until it works." He looked around and thought, "Are they using the corner of the basement wall? It's long, and the width is only about half of my footstep." He then asked, "It's okay if I fall, right?" Hearing that, she replied while looking at her tablet, "The chance of getting injured from a 3-meter fall is very low, but don't get into the mindset that it's okay to fall while running. A shapeshifter's #1 priority is to protect their own body." A voice came from the tablet. "Damn it, Lucas! No, damn it, Mike, are you blind? You!" He wondered curiously, what is she watching? I thought she was looking at my results or something." Julie continued, "If you get injured on the battlefield, it'll be a huge disadvantage. Your body doesn't recover as quickly as an immortal's." Hearing those words, Kwang X sighed and thought to himself, "Well, what else can I do? Let's just get this over with. An instructor is watching Netflix behind me and telling me to protect my body. Immortals like her recover with incredible speed, even if they break a bone." So Kwang X grabbed the barbell and stepped onto the wooden plank. "Then I'll just run with the mentality that it's okay to fall." He suddenly felt something and his eyes widened. A feeling of lightness washed over him. His 5 senses were enhanced. His heightened senses could feel the pressure on his shoes, and he found his center of gravity to maintain balance. Kwang X, covered in sweat, walked on the plank. Although most shapeshifters have excellent reflexes, they can't compare to immortals, who have the ability to perceive their senses so clearly. He walked with a straight posture. "I can do this. This actually seems fun. Besides, it's not like my leg has ever been stabbed by a sword." Kwang X quickly walked back and announced, "I completed it safely." She immediately ordered, 2 more times. Go and come back." Hearing this, he replied, "All right." Julie's gaze fell upon him as she thought, "The width is 4 centimeters and the length is 50 meters, but he managed to complete it without falling even once." Julie announced, "I'm increasing the difficulty." Seeing what was in front of him, Kwang X went pale. "A rope?" he asked worriedly. "Am I going to run on that?" Hearing that, Julie quickly replied, "That's right, this is a real rope. The name of this training is single rope." She stood up and continued to explain, "The wooden plank just now was only a warm-up. Looking at your physique, I thought you wouldn't be able to do it. But you must have been born with good senses. Your balance is excellent." Seeing what Julie was doing, he asked, "Are there mats this time?" She replied, "It's very hard, so you won't crack your head open. But be careful when you fall to the ground. If you grab the rope, your skin will get burned. So just fall. He then asked, I'll be running while holding the weights, right? Julie said, go empty-handed first. Hearing her words, he was lost in thought. After I get used to this, I'll have to carry the weights and run on it. But I'm not afraid. Compared to the Immortals training, this is still a piece of cake. His eyes became determined. But in terms of difficulty, this part is hell level, much harder and more complex. Kwang X began to walk on the rope. He felt a bit tense, but the rope was taut and didn't shake much. It's not like falling from a cliff, and there's no strong wind blowing. There are mats laid out below, which gave him some peace of mind. There are even mats on the floor. Kwang X's eyes filled with confidence. Something like this is nothing to be afraid of. With that thought, Kwang X started running fast. Just run! The faster he moved, the more he wobbled. He calmed his mind and thought, maybe I should slow down. He moved step by step on the rope. His steps were light. He gradually picked up speed, as if he were leaping. Kwang X moved nimbly on the rope. Julie's eyes watched him, filled with excitement. That day, the instructor looked at me as if I were much more interesting than the video she was watching. And she made me run on that single rope all day long with the barbell. Time passed, and the next day arrived. Yuki said her goodbyes. See you next week. Kwang X bowed respectfully to her. As the car began to move, Seon-hee's voice rang out. Kwang X, she asked, aren't you curious why I'm making you do all these things? He quickly replied, of course I am. Her tone turned cold. Because I can't stand seeing my son get beaten up like that. Her next words left him stunned. You need to learn how to use your body properly. You're too weak right now. Kwang X thought to himself, weak? Who are you calling weak, Mom? If my friends heard you say that, they'd pass out from shock. My nickname at JL High is One Punch Man, you know. Kwang X was lost in thought. Well, if this is how things are, I guess I'll just have to train a little more. This way, when I get into LDT, I'll at least be an asset and not a liability. Although, what Mr. Gyeonggi said about the special power of Immortals has really got me thinking. He steeled his resolve. I can definitely get into LDT, right? Around 10 bowls, all eaten clean, were strewn across the table. Thanks for the meal, Mom. Seon-hee approached her son with a worried look. Son, have you been starving these past few days? Hearing this, he replied, after these last 4 days, I've realized just how precious your cooking is, Mom. Kwang X then added, oh, right, Mom. I want to learn how to cook. Seon-hee, confused, asked, cook? He quickly found an excuse to explain. Lately, sexy men who know how to cook are the trend, you know. Please teach me how to cook for my future wife. Hearing his reasoning, Seon-hee seemed convinced and turned away. A sexy man who can cook, huh? Not bad. But first, don't you need to actually be sexy? Looking his body over with a judgmental eye, she said, with your current physique, you'd probably just be a fat man who can cook. Hearing her words, Kwang X muttered, Mom's always such a comedian, isn't she? Seon-hee's tone suddenly turned serious. I am being serious. So stop relying on your shapeshifter's body and eating all day long. Seeing this, he quickly tried to change the subject. Anyway, let's get back to cooking, Mom. His mind flashed to an image of Gyeonggi. My reason for getting that food is because I am a nature lover. And Mr. Gyeonggi's eyes began to sparkle. His mom replied, all right, fine. Hearing that, he cheered with joy, thinking to himself, yes, now that the food issue is solved. Kwang X looked up, his head full of thoughts. Training, huh? There's nothing I can do about that myself. What will we do next week? Will it be the same as this week? He thought, or maybe some new kind of training. Meanwhile, Gyeonggi was sharpening his blade, his mind deep in thought. Tisk, either way is fine. Gyeonggi's face was filled with excitement. Or will it be even harder than what I did this week? His piercing scream echoed through the mountains, sending birds scattering into the sky. His hands were stained with blood. After a 4-day rest, the master had said that the previous training session was just covering the basics, provided separately from the standard entrance requirements. Kwang X clenched his fists. In other words, it was just an endurance trial. My stamina is still lacking. I need physical conditioning, so now these are the mandatory courses. He immediately sat up, scratching his head. I figured as much from the previous sessions. Kwang X held up his hands and looked at them pensively. This might be training suited for a shapeshifter, but aside from the excruciating pain, this course is still more bearable because it ends rather quickly. Of course, from a distance, Gyeonggi's voice echoed, hey, if you're finished down there, get up here now! The problem is, this is all just the basics. He grabbed the blade in his hand and began to speak. A key trait of an immortal is regeneration. Getting shot is no big deal. Even if a bullet passes right through you, you just have to regenerate the flesh and you'll be fine. But when it comes to weapons that don't rely on firepower like this one, it's a real pain. It takes time to regenerate a severed limb. Hearing this, Kwang X replied, so that's why you told us we had to be careful. Gyeonggi's face was full of smug satisfaction as he swung the blade through the air repeatedly. You can withstand attacks that cause minor damage, but against strikes like these, you have to dodge. Seeing that, he grew anxious. Oh man, he's swinging it around like some kind of murderer. Staring at the blade, he asked fearfully, so the reason you brought that blade out is... Gyeonggi shot back, What do you think? I thought you were a smart kid. That's right. This training is the next phase of blade practice, so you're going to dodge this blade. His tone was menacing. Deflect it, or you'll have to take it from my hands. He unleashed a flurry of slashes. Kwang X dodged left, then right to avoid the attack. He leaped backward. Gyeonggi's gaze was firm as he instructed him. The objective here is to evade major damaging blows. If you can't evade, then you must minimize the damage you receive. You can't dodge everything, so you'd better get used to it. You seem pretty nimble. I started to hear those words again. It's annoying. I wonder how I'm supposed to dodge all this. Next, he replied, "All right." He stomped his feet hard on the ground and rushed forward. Swish! He swung his blade straight into my body. Blood oozed out as he immediately started attacking different parts of my body. Then he said, "If I aim for your thighs or calves, use your shin bones to block the blow." Gyeonggi slashed hard at his wrist or deflected it to the side. Swish! With this body, Kwang X immediately backed away, trying to think of a way out of this fight. No matter what I do, I'm still going to get cut by that sword. At least I've gone through this sword training before. His regenerative energy instantly healed the wounds on his body. Seeing this, Gyeonggi's eyes filled with determination. Your regeneration is pretty good. Let's keep going. With that, he immediately ran at full speed, charging towards him. Swish! Blood started spraying everywhere. Kwang X collapsed to the ground, crying out in pain. Seeing this, the man spoke up. Blood loss, it's one of the weaknesses of an immortal. Hearing this, he struggled to reply. So that's why you brought those blood packs for a transfusion? Gyeonggi calmly replied, that's usually the case. It's still better to stop the bleeding first. Kwang X was horrified, thinking, wait, are you seriously going to do that? Just kidding. Then he turned to leave. Let's rest and get something to eat. Hearing that, he asked, what are we eating today, sir? Gyeonggi replied, what are you planning to make? Instant noodles? No. The backpack fell to the ground. Ingredients were carefully chopped on a cutting board. A delicious-looking pasta dish was served. This is spaghetti bolognese. Kwang X, my mom's secret is, if you want to make a tasty dish, then cook something with a lot of sauce. Gyeonggi used a fork to taste the dish. He then praised it. This is good. Hearing this, he replied, at least your sense of taste is still normal, huh? The man snapped. What? Kwang X stammered, trying to explain. No, It's because immortals have enhanced senses. Even though your sense of taste is very sensitive, you can still eat things like this. Hearing this, the man began to wolf down the food and said, cooking is also a form of training. He replied helplessly, you call this training? Gyeonggi ate faster and faster. It helps us recover our stamina. Hearing this, he could only reply, I get it. Eat slowly. Back at the training area, the man spoke to him. Let's add one more thing. Confused, he asked, add one more thing? Gyeonggi slowly approached him. You're used to taking blows with your forearms, so... Swish! Gyeonggi immediately lunged forward, attacking him. Kwang X's eyes were wide with surprise. The man said, it's time to train your internal organ regeneration. He screamed in agony. He was in so much pain that he fell to his knees. Gyeonggi gripped the knife in his hand and said calmly, wait, regenerating internal organs will take more time. So basic training is a must! Kwang X was stunned by what had just happened. He was lost in a panic. I can't dodge. Everything is happening too fast. He asked, just now, how did you do that? Gyeonggi answered smugly, you have to hide your presence. If your opponent's senses are sharp, you have to know how to conceal your breath. He shouted, how do I conceal it? Well, Kwang X trembled from the pain. He muttered, damn it, you stabbed a hole in my stomach. You could have at least given me a heads up. Hearing this, Gyeonggi replied nonchalantly, I get it, you know. Looking at the wound, he said, huh? It's about to heal. He replied, annoyed, isn't it because you stabbed me that I have to regenerate? Gyeonggi replied, right, that's true, but, Do you want to learn how to conceal your presence or not? He quickly replied, yes. Time passed. 2 days later, the elevator descended to floor B2. Kwang X stepped out and greeted, teacher, I'm here. A clicking sound echoed. A handgun was pointed at him. Seeing this, Kwang X asked, is today a survival game? She replied, something like that. Bang! A shot rang out, whizzing past him. A bullet was lodged firmly in the wall. Julie explained, it's a modified gas gun, and it uses special bullets. Then she took aim and said, dodge. He was so surprised by the situation that he froze on the spot. Julie continuously fired shot after shot at him as he ran. While shooting, she said, guns are dangerous. Getting hit can cause you serious damage. Move while I'm aiming, Julie suggested. Find something to take cover behind. And if you can't find any good cover, then run so fast I can't get a proper aim. She taught him how to dodge, telling him not to run in a straight line, but in a zigzag pattern. Don't let anyone predict your movements. If you get caught, focus all your strength into your muscles, change direction, and use the force to propel yourself up. A bullet grazed his shoulder. Seeing this, she yelled, don't get hit! Just one bullet is enough to make you feel helpless. If you're about to be shot, then take the hit with some part of your body, and that won't cripple you. Hearing those words, Hwang Shich thought to himself as he ran, preventing the loss of mobility. So this is what it's like for the immortals. His mind quickly put it all together. He had been taught by both sides that the fighting styles of immortals and shapeshifters depend on their specific traits. Images of his past training flashed through his mind. Instead of teaching him how to fight, they were images of him giving up and then forcing himself to overcome it. It was about how to survive. The relentless effort, the harsh training for any situation he might face. He quickly recalled all those past exercises. Immortals need to be careful with bladed weapons because they can cause a massive amount of damage. With guns, a shotgun is even more dangerous than a rifle. On the other hand, shapeshifters are more than willing to fight knife wielders. All you need to do is dodge and counter. The reflexes and strength of a shapeshifter allow for that kind of combat. For them, a shotgun might be a bit easier to control since its spread is so wide. You just have to get close to them and then it's game over. They just need to keep as much distance as possible to make hitting them impossible. Shapeshifters can't regenerate, so their movements are calculated, all with the intent of taking 0 damage. His heavy panting echoed as bullet casings littered the floor. Julie spoke up. All right, training's over. He looked around and wondered, how are we supposed to clean all of this up? She quickly ordered, get up and run to that tree over there. He replied, okay. Kwang X thought to himself as he lifted weights. At least this kind of physical training is better than stupidly injuring myself. He started walking on a tightrope. Suddenly, the silhouette of a hideous creature appeared behind him. Kwang X sensed it and grew anxious. The rope began to shake slightly, and he fell hard to the ground below. With a panicked look, Kwang X whipped his head around. Only Julie was standing behind him. Her eyes widened in surprise as she exclaimed, "You?" Her next words sent a chill down his spine. "You could sense it?" Kwang X asked blankly. "What was that?" Julie walked towards him, explaining, "That was bloodlust. I see you can feel it." The boy looked disgusted. "Don't do that again. It feels like my heart is going to explode." "I don't like it one bit." Despite this, she released her killing intent once more. "It'll be fine once you get used to it. And if you can do something similar, things will become much easier." Kwang X's face darkened with fear. "Let's continue training." And so it went on. The hellish shapeshifter training began, but the good news was that after 2 days, I stopped falling off the rope. I even figured out a way to withstand her bloodlust. Julie's serious expression was terrifying. She kept doing it over and over, so I just gritted my teeth and pushed through the training. Thanks to my enhanced immortal senses, I was able to perceive the bloodlust through my 5 senses and use a 6th sense to harness it. His feet moved step by step across the rope. His hands lifted a weight. Tighten your lower abs, hold steady, and a part of it will be brought under your control. Julie stood below, watching him meticulously. She suddenly let out a satisfied sigh. He did it. His hand tightened around the small sword. My training continued. I alternated between immortal and shapeshifter training, and the immortal training sessions were like a punishment from hell. The old equipment was stained with red blood, all to develop my self-healing abilities. My coach continuously shot arrows at me. I had to train with axes, spears, and bows. Even bear traps and other traps were used. "You have to be extremely careful with traps," he said, pointing to my head to explain. "Once you're caught, it's excruciatingly painful. And when the pain is too much, your mind won't be able to stay clear." I asked curiously, "So, are things that cause continuous pain more dangerous than things that cause instant pain?" He walked over to me and said calmly, "Usually, yes. Immortals fight while taking damage. That's why you have to get used to pain, because pain makes it hard to think straight." Kwang X's training continued with such harsh exercises. The next thing I did was drink poison. Shapeshifter training was much easier in comparison. I had to train while wearing weights and iron armor. He panted while lifting a dumbbell with just one hand. Then, I had to add weights to my ankles and wrists. The boy trembled as he tried to keep both hands balanced. I also had to practice dodging bullets and walking across a bed of fire. Other times, I'd train with barbells. Of course, they always changed it up. While I was training, my dad went on a business trip for 10 days. My parents hugged each other tightly in front of me. "What if I miss you while you're away?" Ionho flirtatiously replies, "That's not good, but honey, you're loving it every single day." The poor son next to them can only sigh, "Mom, you'd think Dad was gone for years or something." For this training session, I even used a wooden sword. "When she's not poking holes all over me, she's teaching me how to use weapons and martial arts," Jongi suddenly commented. "You're a pretty fast learner when it comes to shooting," Kwang X thought to himself. "I feel like it's quite difficult." His sword fight with Uncle Du was intense, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. Maybe it's because I have the strength and reflexes of a shifter that I'm learning pretty quickly. Julie was taking her turn supervising him. Even though it's just a model gun, it's pretty similar to a real one. The young man focused intently, raising the gun. Other times, she would let him practice shooting. She reminded him seriously, "Practicing martial arts is good and all, but you can train that at home. You can do it just by watching a few clips, but target practice is different. It requires intense focus." Countless bullet casings flew out as he fired. "That's what she said, but I'm a hybrid with the 5, special senses of an immortal, so this is actually pretty easy." Night quickly fell. 2 months passed just like that. His father sat leisurely on the chair with his wife. "Son, did you just get back from training?" Kwang X replied politely, "Yes. I got a week off after some tough training, but it's making me antsy. Don't tell me my body doesn't want to be in pain. I hope not." Both of them looked at him with expectant eyes. You seem much stronger now. Good job, son. After that, they started getting all lovey-dovey again. He gets that from me. That's because he's smart, just like you. I could only laugh it off. I'm so used to how incredibly passionate they are. Still, why don't I have a little sister? Guang X tossed his clothes into the hamper beside him. The young man looked at his reflection in the mirror. He leaned his hands on the edge of the sink as a few jealous thoughts suddenly surfaced in his mind. How come I don't have a girlfriend? It's not like my standards are that high. So why can't I find anyone? I don't want someone overly healthy and sexy like my mom, just someone cute and mature. But she has to be a little charming, too. And if she knows how to cook, that would be amazing. It'd be nice if we had some common interests, but if possible, I'd want her to look really good in jeans. And if I could ask for more, I'd want her to be smart and sensible. Just then, Sunhee's phone suddenly vibrated with a call. She immediately stood up and told her husband, I'm going to see Himmy's mom for a bit. He was surprised. At this hour? She quickly explained. Her kid is going through puberty right now, so she must be so stressed out. Yeonho quickly understood the situation. Ah, that stressful time. The door opened and closed softly as Sunhee left. Yeonho glanced meaningfully at the phone beside him. Guang X, finished with his shower, came downstairs with a wet towel. Mom, I can't find the hairdryer anywhere. However, the living room was empty. Huh? Why is no one here? The young man sat down on a chair and picked up his phone. A message his dad had sent earlier. There's a test tomorrow. It's been a while since I've taken a test. This feels weird. He suddenly remembered a few old things. My friends were also wondering why I didn't go to university after finishing the CISIC test. They took turns questioning me. You really didn't apply anywhere? You're stubborn, man. Let me see your score. Guang X wasn't too bothered by it. I don't think I'd be ashamed if I didn't use my high score for anything. Besides, I don't even want to go to university. I've already figured out my own path. Time flashes back 9 years ago, to the day the gates first started to open. I was just a small, weak kid back then, hiding under the rubble of collapsed buildings. Tears were welling up in my eyes. Guang X looked astonished. But from the moment I saw him, that tall figure in front of me was unforgettable. Fighting against countless invaders, I decided that I had to be like him. He leaned back with a small smile. My mom would be so sad if she knew. She said she wanted me to have a normal life, like before I awakened. Where did she go anyway? At that moment, the lights of the convenience store were still on. Someone's voice called out. Jo-Yi walked over, waving her hand. Kang Seun-hee. She started the conversation. What excuse did you use to get out of the house? She looked over at her friend. I said I had to visit my parents who live nearby. The two of them stopped at a place where they could talk conveniently. Aren't you curious at all? Sunhee's mom elaborated. About your son. The other person took a sip of water and replied, You never ask what your son is up to. She clicked her tongue softly. I just want my son to do well with that hybrid blood of his. No. A hybrid of a shifter usually loses half of the shifter's abilities, she said, looking ahead thoughtfully. That's why I don't ask, because I'm worried. Elsewhere, a surprised voice came from a phone. Huh? What? Are you serious? Yeonho was on the upper floor, threatening that person. So you want me to cut off your limbs, is that it? How about I throw you into the sea? The person on the other end of the line retorted. You really don't know, huh? I thought you wouldn't call me because you already knew. Kwang X's father replied, confused. What are you talking about? But the person cut him off with an assertion. He's abnormal. Yeonho's eyes darted towards the phone. What? Meanwhile, Seun-hee was still pouring her heart out to her friend. He doesn't have to be a genius or exceptional or anything. I just want my son to be able to protect himself from those crazy science groups or things like that. Jugu suddenly slammed her can down. Crazy science groups? There was one a long time ago. Those bastards were always trying to create special species, by combining other species with purebloods. The words filled with hatred were spat out. An abnormal. Seun-hee beside her agreed. Yeah, and they failed. They ended up creating monsters with the powers of both species. She seemed a little uncomfortable talking about it. There's only one conclusion to draw from what they did. It doesn't matter if you're an immortal, a shapeshifter, a superman, or whatever. If you try to create another species from humans, it only ends up weakening the power of the original species. Hearing this, Julie suddenly burst out laughing. You're lucky, you know. Her friend was surprised. What? Julie looked her straight in the eye to confirm. Your son is much more special. But Yeonho, hearing that news, was also stunned. Abnormal? Does that mean my son is weaker by half? I thought my son would be at least over half since my blood is dominant. Kwang X's coach retorted. No. On the contrary, he has so much potential. He's a prodigy, with potential I've never seen before. I even taught him how to hide his abilities. The boy's father froze in shock. Really? Over on the other side, Julie was reaching her conclusion. His body, you'd have to call it perfect. But more than that. She seemed more interested in what came next. More than that, she immediately continued. He has a fantastic noggin. Seun-hee got a little angry. Don't use that word. But her expression changed to astonishment when she heard everything else she said. He's intelligent and incredibly talented. He even learned bloodlust. Yeonho was feeling the exact same way. If you're lying just to flatter me, I'll have you smelling dirt for the next 2 weeks. Seon-hee, meanwhile, was wary of Julie. You're not being very funny. However, in response to the threat came Julie's firm words. I'm serious. Your son is very talented. The female coach smiled sincerely. Your son is a genius. Kwang X's father's lips curled into a slight, silent smile. His mother had the exact same expression. Both of them, filled with joy and happiness, thought to themselves, that's my boy. Kwang X woke up from a good sleep with a long yawn. Good morning, Mom. The young man rubbed his eyes and asked, Where's Dad? Seon-hee was busy preparing breakfast. He left for work early. You should wash up and eat soon, too. He was a little surprised to see the lavish meal. Okay, huh? Whoa, is today some kind of special occasion? As she brought out the food, she replied, Of course, today is a very important day. Her son suddenly remembered. That's right. He immediately thought of it. Today is the civil service exam. Seon-hee had said enthusiastically, To make the most of your brain's potential, you need to make sure it has enough glucose. That's why people usually just think of things they can just mix with water. Basically, it just means eating something sweet in the morning. So, you don't need to eat a huge pile of food for breakfast. But instead of easily digestible food, just like with the CSATs, you'll get sleepy if you eat too much, or suddenly need to run to the bathroom. Kwang X replied quietly, Yes. Although the training I've gone through had nothing to do with using my head. It was survival training. In his mind, all he could see was a horrific scene. In reality, rivers of blood. Some kind of special immortal test day. The 8 plates on the table were cleared in no time. Thanks for the meal, Mom. Yes. Seon-hee followed him to the front door to ask, Are you ready? As the young man got ready, he reassured her. Yes. I studied so hard that the material even came out in my dreams. I dreamed about having my legs cut off and my organs pierced. She mumbled sorrowfully. If you fail, your father will be very disappointed. Her words surprised him. Kwang X turned his head back to look at his mother with understanding. I get it. She doesn't want me to become a civil servant, but she doesn't want me to fail either. She wants to cheer for me, but she's worried about the shapeshifter part of me. He then confidently declared to her, Don't worry, Mom. I'm an immortal too. His mother proposed very casually. Oh, really? All right then. If you fail, we'll see each other in the boxing ring. Remembering her strength made him shudder. That's a bit... I just thought of something I really didn't want to think about. Seon-hee returned to her usual gentle demeanor and smiled. If you don't want that to happen, then you'd better pass. Kwang X cheerfully promised, Yes, I guarantee I'll pass. The young man stepped outside and pressed the button for the first floor in the elevator. He hummed a little tune to himself while he waited. Listening to music is the best way to deal with stress. He was suddenly startled. Wait. With the precise senses of an immortal, a pang shot through Kwang X's throat in reaction. The elevator reached the 13th floor as I was humming a sweet tune. I don't know why I kept saying things that were the opposite of what I felt in my heart. And looking back now, I truly regret it. From now on, I'm going to tell you that I've loved you from the very first moment. When Hymin accidentally took her phone to the elevator and heard everything, well, that's just how much I've loved you. He also sensed something wasn't quite right and stopped immediately. The girl sighed and put her phone aside. If you want to confess to me, you don't have to sing. You've already got that face, so you don't need to be a good singer. His attitude changed in an instant. Kang Heeman, why do you care about things like that? She giggled, teasing the person next to her. Aren't you going to confess to me? The answer that came from Kwang X was decisive. Yeah, no. She immediately pressed him. Why? The other person sighed in exasperation. Haven't I told you about my ideal type countless times? Despite that, she suddenly grabbed his hand. Heeman smiled like a blossoming flower to charm the young man. Do you think a beautiful, smart girl with a perfect body like me is easy to find? Just then, the elevator arrived at floor 1 with a ding. The young man shook Heeman's hand off. Don't say things like that. Society is a scary place these days. So you want to end up in handcuffs? And smart? Do you have any shame at all? She still tried to follow him. Wait for me! The person walking ahead coldly shooed her away. Don't follow me? Heeman asked curiously. Appa, where are you going? He replied curtly and concisely. To the civil service exam site. Upon hearing that, she unconsciously blurted out, Edwin? Kwang X's voice grew even more irritated. They really know how to advertise. It's like brainwashing. The two of them stopped at the bus stop. Anyway, I'm busy. Go to class. The girl next to him continued to plead, Appa, I'm a senior in high school now. I'll be in college next year. He replied nonchalantly, Congratulations. When you get your ID card, don't waste your life on beer and liquor. The girl immediately retorted, You know you're only 1 year older than me, right? The young man immediately shot back. See the age difference now? Heeman stammered, flustered. No, that's not what I meant. She practically glowed, showing off her charms. I'm at an all-girls high school now, but I don't want to go to an all-girls university next year. This hot and charming girl is going to attract a lot of thirsty guys next year. He cut her off sternly. You should focus on your studies first. Your mom is really worried about you. Heeman tried to persuade him. But we're dating. You should help me study too. That's what having a smart boyfriend is for, to take advantage of him for things like this. Kwang X walked straight onto the bus with a wave. Who's your boyfriend? The poor guy had just hit the self-destruct button. Left behind, she was incredibly bitter. Get lost! He got on the bus, but was still a little wary. Kang Heeman's specialty, the damn high kick. Miss High Kick is a high school senior now and still hasn't changed a bit. The bus wheels quickly started rolling, moving swiftly down the road. It stopped at a red light. The peaceful scenery around was just as it always was. Before long, he arrived in front of a tall, multi-story building. Kwang X stood outside the entrance, lost in thought. 7:50. The exam doesn't start until 9, so I'm a bit early. Where should I go now? In the end, he decided to go inside the building. Hello! A cheerful employee stood up to greet him. Yes, what brings you here today? He quickly explained the situation. I heard there's a special exam being held today. A man who was already waiting nearby spoke up. Are you a test taker? Kwang X turned to answer. Yes. The man stared at him with a menacing aura, unconcealed suspicion in his voice. Can I see your examination admission ticket? This made him nervous, too. Why is he staring at me like I'm some kind of fraud? They checked it very quickly before giving him instructions. Here you are, Kwang X. Yes, it's confirmed. Please use the elevator to go to the 9th floor. Kwang X stepped out of the elevator, puzzled. This is it? The next guide was already there. Are you a test taker? He answered, as expected, yes. The woman made a request. Let me see your documents. She held 2 different pieces of paper in her hands and looked at them thoughtfully. Yes, confirmed. She pressed a button, opening a door. Go to the last room inside. Kwang X politely complied, but was starting to feel a bit annoyed. All right. What a hassle. Are all Immortal exams like this? His footsteps echoed through the empty hallway. The place was designed very minimally, with many rooms. He stopped when he reached the so-called Special Examination Center. He stopped walking. This room? The young man stood still for a moment to assess the acoustics. It must be a chaotic, bloody mess in there, but it's in the middle of Yewido, the old guard. Is this the power of the world government? His resolve hardened. All right, focus. When I open the door, knives might fly out. Dodging them might be the condition to enter the exam center. The door slowly creaked open as he remained on high alert. But I'm sure it's something horrifying. Just like the training I've been through, waiting for me. But surprisingly, the inside was spacious and tidy. It's not? The only person in this room spoke up. You're the earliest one here. Kwang X was startled by this unexpected person. The first thing he noticed was that shiny bald head. He's bald? That employee was focused, saying, come here and show me your papers, while he was lost in his own train of thought. We've developed an anti-hair loss tonic with ingredients from Baksan. A long time ago. There are even cheaper drugs with side effects. Which means... He was incredibly surprised to conclude that the man was bald for fashion. That man raised an eyebrow, looking up questioningly. Contestant Kwang X hurriedly went over and presented what was needed. Here are my papers and my ID. Why so many checks? Isn't looking at this handsome face of mine enough for you? He quickly pointed him to his seat. Number 48, over there. He thought suspiciously to himself, this competition is different from what I imagined. Why are there desks and chairs? I never saw them in all my training sessions. Still, he obediently sat down at his desk. Once the exam really starts, who knows what could happen? That bald guy might suddenly pull out a knife and charge at me. He clasped his hands together and stared intently. All right. Focus until the very end. A murderous aura began blazing from Kwang X's desk. This way, nothing will catch me by surprise. Time passed quickly, and the other contestants around him arrived and took their seats. Some held books, muttering nonstop, but others used notebooks to review everything. Sweat started to pour from him. Kwang X, male, 20 years old, was currently experiencing the biggest shock of his life. That man stood up, holding a pen. I'm sure everyone brought one, but does anyone not have a pen? He paused to look around the room for a moment. Kwang X hesitated for a long time before daring to raise one hand. The man immediately sized him up. And who the hell are you? Even he was at a loss for words. I knew it, huh? Kwang X sensed something was wrong but couldn't say a thing. He suddenly recalled old memories. I don't know since when I started preparing for this exam. Not just my mom, but my dad also reminded me. The extra lessons for the exam were just a string of days of continuous, unending suffering. The boy ran until he collapsed, trembling in pain, but I still poured my heart into it. My trainer was even ruthless, cutting and slashing me, all to pass this exam. Kwang X's face clearly darkened. However, the proctor's announcement rang out. The exam will begin in 10 minutes. He was the first one to arrive and spent 50 minutes just staring into space. So he was panicking. I've come to the wrong place. He couldn't stop sweating bullets at the man's words. I'm sure everyone has a pen, but is there anyone who doesn't have one? He could only think miserably to himself. My last hope has been extinguished. The other man handed him the pen quite normally. Take it. He stared at the pen for a final check. A normal pen? I guess I'm taking a written test after all. Kwang X looked around the exam room curiously again. The atmosphere here is just like other testing centers. But what are they studying? If I ask to see what they're looking at, will I get yelled at? Their faces shone brightly in his mind. I noticed it earlier, but everyone here is gorgeous. The men have this really attractive, rugged look. Some of them could even be idols. The young man turned back to his seat, but his eyes were still glued to someone. Among all of them, the most attractive one is. The tall young man with the broad back next to him made him incredibly jealous. Damn, this guy. My God, even his hands are beautiful. It's like he's shooting a commercial all by himself. What is that glowing aura behind him? He happened to look up and made eye contact with Kwang X, but then immediately looked away as if avoiding interaction. He felt a little awkward about the situation. God, I hope he didn't get the wrong idea about me. People from outside came in quickly. Staff pushed through the door with props, moving blackboards around the desks, which surprised him. The wheels attached under the blackboards screeched as they were moved. The same thing was happening outside, too, and they were pulled around professionally. Soon, blackboards had completely surrounded Kwang X's field of vision. The proctor spoke up again. We will now begin distributing the test papers. The young man calmly rested his chin on his hand. Are these partitions for immortals with heightened senses? No wonder the desks are so far apart. Outside the entrance, the hurried voices of people could still be heard. Did I just make it on time? The instructor quickly assigned him, contestant number 50 is over there. The other guy stammered an explanation. I overslept. Kwang X, meanwhile, was focused on the packet of papers being handed out. If this were any other kind of test, they would have immediately rejected latecomers like him. He glanced over it with a few thoughts. A test for immortals looks pretty chill. But looking closer, inside was a warning. Special employment test for immortals. If you tell anyone on the outside, or post anything online spreading information about the private law test specifically for special species, he immediately reconsiders. All right, I take it back. Whispers start to spread. This is too hard. Silence. The young man clutches his head and groans. Honestly, I'd rather run through blades than do this kind of test, so I can show them my talent for running through blades. Kwang X's gaze falls back on the paper in surprise. The questions inside are multiple choice. Your leg has been pierced by a hole the size of a coin. Which of the following actions should you take first? 1. Use a portable blood transfusion pack. 2. Determine the origin of the wound. Is it a gunshot wound or a burn wound? 3. Find something else to do. 4. Apply pressure to the wound. 5. Pray to the heavens and avoid reality. He couldn't help but exclaim, "What is this?" Kwang X rubs the back of his neck as he circles an answer. Did someone say this was hard? He chooses number 4. The young man carefully calculates the possibilities. If I weren't a special species, then options 2 and 3 would be more important, but a wound the size of a coin isn't that big. Assuming it's a gunshot wound, the first thing to do is apply pressure to the wound. Jangi's words echoed in his mind. Whatever you do, you must always prioritize stopping the bleeding first. Continuous blood loss will lead to shock. Yep, apply pressure, then find something to stop the bleeding. The young man became even more certain of his reasoning. My master said that back then, too. But if you've run through a few blades a couple of times, you learn that on your own. As long as you stop the bleeding, nothing else will happen. He continued to the next line. Question 2. When losing blood at a high rate, what percentage of blood loss will lead to shock? 1. 5 to 10%. 2. 10 to 15%. 3. 15 to 20%. 4. 20 to 25%. 5. 25 to 30%. Why are all the questions like this? This is related to a lesson I once experienced. I've never gone into shock, so I used to get yelled at for it. Jianggi relentlessly chased and attacked him. Why haven't you gone into shock yet, huh? How many more times do I have to stab you for it to be enough? Kwang X was panicking at the time. How many more times are you going to stab me? He said I must be an immortal. But if not, then I'm just a normal person. If I went into shock like a normal person, the answer would be 3. And just like that, he continued solving the problems on the test. Next question. You cannot dodge an opponent's blade attack. What do? The answer is, give them your arm. I've been told about how important mobility is. Countless times. The pen in the young man's hand moved non-stop. Next question is... Suddenly, I'm remembering a movie I saw a while back. He worked leisurely, his mind wandering. The main character was born into a poor family and decided to join a quiz show with a huge prize. That character answered the questions by using their life experiences. This one is about poison. I'm pretty good with this stuff. Meanwhile, the others were pulling their hair out. This test wants to ask the participants whether they've used their immortal bodies much or not, and how much they know about them. But all of this just made him think to himself, I've used this body to endure some absolutely horrific training sessions. Ah, no. To put it simply, I've come back from hell itself. Fragments of memories reappeared in his mind, helping him solve the problems. The fundamentals I learned from my master, and the knowledge I gained from going through so many training sessions. He put the pen down after finishing. All of that has given me the answers. Kwang X's hands rested on the table, perfectly calm. Training is learning. But the young man suddenly noticed something on the back of the page. Oh, there's another question on the back. It's a written response question? But the question still didn't stump him. How do you kill an immortal? This is... Well, obviously, I'll just finish this last question. Kwang X curiously looked around the room. I'm done. How long has it been? The bald man also noticed him. He still has another hour left. Did he give up? Whoever finishes early can leave first. You just need to flip your paper over and leave. The young man did as instructed and gently pushed the door to go outside. He was quite surprised to see a familiar face, Luna with the bob haircut by the entrance. The girl stood in front of him with a tablet in her hand. Did you read the agreement details written on the paper? Kwang X quickly replied, I did. The staff member then held out the electronic tablet. This is about the agreement. He reached out to scroll through it. Personal Information Protection Act. If I violate the agreement, I'll be arrested by the office, regardless of whether I'm an immortal or not. Whoa, that sounds scary. Agree. She suddenly asked him, You're a hybrid, I take it? Although a bit surprised, he answered politely, yeah, that's right. A hybrid between a shapeshifter and an immortal. The young woman smiled brightly. Good luck. Kwang X's cheeks suddenly flushed red. Thank you. Is this my chance? Besides, she wasn't really my type that night. In the place where the Immortals competition was held, lights were still on in a few rooms. That bald man held his head and sighed. In his hand was Kwang X's test paper. Who is this kid? Explain how to kill an immortal, other than burial underground or in water. The answer was written very concisely. Suffocation, freezing, burning, grinding into powder. All of these are dangerous to an immortal. Suffocation causes unconsciousness. Being frozen by nitrogen renders one immobile, and someone burned by fire cannot function normally, and they can't regenerate while being ground into powder. If you're asked for a way to kill an immortal, no single answer can be specific enough. He pondered to himself. From the start, this question had no specific answer. Most immortals have a severe lack of knowledge about their own safety. That's why we had to create questions about dangerous weapons and situations to see if they truly know what can harm an immortal's body. He focused on the essay question. The final question is about that very problem. Our bodies can regenerate, but that doesn't mean they can't die. Once we understand that, we can minimize facing death without needing to memorize every single method of killing an immortal. Wang Yin's information was laid out before him. I heard he's a half-breed between an immortal and a human. His physical abilities are probably lacking, but his intelligence could be very useful. The bald man tried to picture him. Someone who didn't look like an immortal, who was the first to arrive and sat motionless for an entire hour. He was the first to leave the room, without taking any pens with him. The grading is done. Now for the impression score. His impression. 15 days passed in a flash. His phone buzzed with an incoming call. Kwang picked it up and said, Mom? Seon-hee, who was in the kitchen, answered. Then he immediately told her the news. I passed the civil service exam. She was very pleased and praised him. Oh, really? That's amazing. But the young man held out his phone. It's not just that I passed, Mom. Seon-hee turned her head, puzzled. What else is there? A message from the web was displayed. Special employment test for immortals. We would like to inform you that you have passed the first written exam with the highest score. Her eyes immediately locked onto the last line. You got the highest score? Seon-hee's hand grabbed the knife on the counter while her other hand quickly picked up the phone. She joyfully called his father with the news. In-ho, honey? Our boy passed the exam with the highest score. That's right. Of course he did. Me too. Let's get premium Korean beef. He then suggested to her, can I unbuckle my belt tonight? However, his mother coldly refused. Just wear one that's more elastic. Night came quickly to the warm home of Kwang X's family. Dad's home! He immediately ran out to greet his father. Dad, welcome home! His father exclaimed in surprise. Son! His son's attitude made him a bit sad. You could at least say hello to your dad, you know. Right then, he was incessantly muttering, premium beef. Each slice of meat, prepared by his mother and grilled on the stove, smelled delicious. The three of them cheerfully clinked their beer glasses together. In-ho and Sun-hee couldn't stop praising him. I knew you would pass! Of course! Whose son is this, I wonder? Our son. He comfortably shared his experience. The questions were easier than I imagined. The proctor was cooler than I thought, too. His father passed him a piece of meat, making him very excited. Now that you have the results, the interview is next, right? Just the interview and then you're all set. The son replied while eagerly waiting to eat the meat. Yes. Kwang X's mother suddenly wondered, what department will he be in? In-ho had the same question. He'll definitely start in a public enterprise under the Ministry of the Interior and Safety. I'm not so sure, he added. Kwang X stopped eating his meat and observed them. Really? His father was still smiling cheerfully, and he could see that his mother liked his father's casual demeanor. But to me, it felt like Dad was avoiding the question. At that moment, he himself was curious. What do the government and ODOX choose immortals for anyway? What does an immortal civil servant even do? He chewed with his mouth full, but he kept his eyes glued to his father. I have so many questions, but I'm sure Dad won't give me a straight answer for any of them. In-ho noticed his gaze and asked, "What is it?" Kwang X tried to start a conversation with him. "Dad, can you give me some tips for the upcoming interview?" But he immediately brushed the issue aside. Dad knows nothing at all. A short while after celebrating his top score on the written exam, Kwang X put on his vest and neatly straightened his tie. I had received a message informing me of the date for my interview. It was scheduled to take place in the same building. Right up until the end, even after the written exam, Dad still refused to tell me anything. Yonho smiled brightly and said, "I already told you I don't know. Generally, interviews like this ask about your personality and stuff, so I've already prepared my answers in my head." Recalling those words, he thought to himself, whatever. This is the real test. Seuni appeared from behind him. Her eyes filled with pride as she looked at him and said encouragingly, "My son, do your best." With a calm demeanor, Kwang X quickly replied, "Yes." The apartment elevator reached the first floor. Kwang X stepped out, glanced around, and leaned close to the reflective door. He thought, admiring himself. Looking this handsome, I could probably debut as a celebrity. From behind, Heeman appeared and commented, "Wow, aren't you full of yourself? Are you admiring yourself in the reflection and putting on a one-man show?" He turned to her and said, "We've been bumping into each other a lot lately, huh? Are you stalking me or something?" She scoffed and replied, "Stalking you? As if I was just passing by." He started lecturing her. "It's the weekend. Instead of going out to have fun, you should be studying. You're a senior, after all." Hearing him, she retorted, "Why don't you save the scolding for when you actually become a tutor?" Kwang X sighed wearily and replied, "I don't have time for this." With an awkward expression, Hyman complimented him. "That suit, it looks really good on you." Kwang X gave a faint smile and replied, "I know." At the company for the interview. The sky today is so clear. In the waiting room for special recruits, Kwang X walked in and glanced around. The other candidates were focused on their phones. Everyone's so hard-working. Should I read up on some interview stories from a major company? Suddenly, he noticed the man nearby. It's that pretty boy who sat next to me at the testing center. The guy's eyes widened, then he immediately turned away with a look of disgust. Seeing that, Kwang X got annoyed and thought to himself, "What's with that attitude? I'm not sitting next to you this time." Of course, it's not because I don't want to be compared to you. A quiet atmosphere enveloped the entire hallway. Suddenly, a door opened. A male employee from inside called out, "Candidate number 48, do Kwang X." He quickly responded, "Here." Kwang X slowly walked into the room. Looking at the man before him, Kwang X thought, his skin is deathly pale and his hair is bright red. His nickname should be the Candle. His gaze shifted to the woman beside him. She asked gently, "We've met before, haven't we?" He was surprised to see her. "The woman from the exam center? She's an interviewer now?" Dharam began the questioning. "First, may I ask what motivated you to apply here?" Kwang X thought for a moment before answering. "If I say, because my dad told me to, I'll definitely fail, right? First, I wanted to challenge myself with a difficult exam like this, to see how far I could go," he continued, "and also because I want to make my dream come true." Hearing that last word, Kim Han asked, "A dream?" Kwang X answered swiftly, "I want to fight for my country and its people." Kim Han pressed on, "Then how much would you sacrifice for your allies?" He replied, "I don't know. It would depend on the situation at the time." Hearing this, the man asked coldly, "So you're saying you don't intend to sacrifice anything at all?" Kwang X quickly gave a persuasive answer, "No. Instead, I will find a practical solution." As he spoke, he worried to himself, "Sigh, that sounded a bit provocative, didn't it?" Many more predictable questions and answers followed. Then, Dharam posed a question to him. "If your mother and your girlfriend were drowning, who would you save first?" Without a moment's hesitation, Kwang X replied, "I think I would save them both at the same time. I'm a very good swimmer." Kim Han then asked, "What if you only had one bullet left, but 2 targets to shoot?" With a deadpan expression, Kwang X answered, "I'd shoot one and throw the gun at the other one." Hearing his words, she pictured the scene in her head, then covered her face and groaned, "Ah." My answer must not have been convincing enough. Oh well, so that's what happened during my interview. A few days later, while he was playing a game, Kwang X's laughter filled the room. Seeing him, Seuni spoke up. "My son, are you just going to laze around all day now that the interview is over? You don't have any plans for today, do you? Go out and do something." Hearing that, he replied, "Huh? I do have plans, you know." She then asked, "Really?" He replied, "Yes." Then Seon-hee spoke up threateningly. "You know what will happen if you fail, don't you?" Hearing those words, Kwang X's expression changed. A date with Mom in the ring. And that night would end with a bloody lesson. Seon-hee continued asking, "Plans with who?" He quickly answered, "I have plans with myself. Today I'm going to laze around, eat, and sleep." Seon-hee was speechless at his answer. She suddenly clenched her fists, her tone excited as she exclaimed, "Suddenly my hands are getting itchy. I really want to do something." "So where should we go? Do you want to go hiking? It's been a long time." "Let's go out and talk." Hearing this, he replied dejectedly, "Yes." Seon-hee warned, You have to be careful out there, okay? She continued to advise, poisonous insects are very dangerous for shapeshifters. If you get controlled by them, a lot of bad things can happen. Not understanding, he asked, like what, for example? Shunhee replied, usually you get attacked by them. He asked again, and what's the second most dangerous thing? She answered, their poison weakens your recovery ability. Shunhee continued to pose questions to him. Do you know why we have the story about the wolf howling at the full moon? There was a child who was a shapeshifter. They couldn't control their instincts and cried out to the moon one night. And at that very moment, the full moon appeared, she said, her voice tinged with sadness. If you can't suppress your emotions, just go outside and scream your heart out, okay? Hearing her words, he replied, but from what we hear on the news, the most chaotic and shocking incidents are always caused by mages and superhumans. I've also never heard anyone howling at night. Hearing this, Seunhee offered a solution. There is a way to suppress your emotions. Surprised, he asked, what is it? She immediately stated, self-control. Hearing those words, Gwang-ik's mind flashed back to his training. After I awakened, Mom often took me hiking. That must have been to practice my self-control through hiking. Seunhee pointed at him and explained seriously, and it also helps you relax your mind. You can use your energy to supplement your training and self-control. That's where the problem lies. Her next words left Gwang-ik speechless, not knowing how to respond. That's why I told you to go get a girlfriend. If you don't find one, you're just going to get all moldy sooner or later, you'll see, she continued. Well, if that happens, maybe it's better to just let yourself get moldy, huh? You're going to have a hard time getting by. Seunhee said, are you He quickly cut her off. No! Hearing him, Seunhee sighed, rubbing her temples. If you keep acting like this, I'm going to get really worried. Maybe you need to go out. Stop lying around at home all the time. She continued, now that you've passed, why don't you go out and relax a bit? What do you want to do now? Hearing this, Gwang-ik stammered out. That brought him back to the interview. Daram spoke up, congratulating him. Congratulations on being accepted. She handed a file to Gwang-ik and explained, please give this a brief look, and feel free to ask me if you have any questions. Gwang-ik took the file and read the information inside, thinking to himself, a 5-week training session, an orientation course. What could they possibly teach that takes over a month? Living in a dorm during the probationary period? His eyes suddenly widened in astonishment. The information in the document was a complete shock. Annual salary for new employees is 60,500,000 won. Physical training expenses covered. Bonuses will be added separately. Cultural and recreational activity fees covered. After the probationary period, an office and a condominium near the workplace will be provided. Other activity fees covered. Diverse welfare benefits for this and that covered. Diverse and incredibly diverse. If you work for more than 18 months, you will be exempt from military service. Gwang-ik suddenly exclaimed, my dream is to be a soldier! He then cursed himself internally in embarrassment. What the hell is wrong with this company? Are they all insane? They're completely disrupting the Korean work ecosystem. Daram spoke up. Do you have any questions? Hearing that, he asked, can I show this document to my parents? She then asked, your father is an immortal, correct? He replied, mm-hmm. Daram's face lit up with excitement. She rested her chin on her hand and said, if you want your mother to get a life sentence in prison, then feel free to let her know. I'm sure it'll make for a wonderful memory. Don't you think so? Hearing her words, he thought in terror. She says the most insane things in the cutest way possible. Back in the present, Gwang-ik was full of anxiety. Then, I can't tell Mom. He spoke up. Mom, but these conditions and benefits... His eyes showed clear determination. I intend to become the head of the Ministry of Public Administration and Security! Hearing that, she let out a long, weary sigh. Then she said, oh, really? As a young man who aspires to be a contributing member of society, I believe this level of dedication is necessary. He calmly thought to himself, I just want to work at a company where they recognize my value. It's definitely not because of the money or the free house. Definitely not. Seunhee stood up. All right, that's enough. He continued, it's all thanks to your intelligent father and your beautiful mother. Of course, it's because you inherited it from us. Suddenly, she exclaimed, I'm so happy. He was quite surprised by her words. Seeing this, Seunhee explained, Mom's happy to have me as her son. It means you still love me, except for those silly jokes of yours. She spoke to him gently. If there were a child like you in a group of shapeshifters. He quickly reassured her, I'm really okay. His mind filled with anxious thoughts. I feel you're very lucky to be born a hybrid. Shapeshifters have to face their instincts, and immortals have to face extremely dangerous things. The number of special species criminals increases every year. What's the solution? He thought to himself. I've heard that many shapeshifters have incredibly violent instincts, and immortals are extremely sensitive. But I'm not like any of them. Looking at the scenery, Gwang-ik was lost in thought. My instincts are at a level that I can control them just by using everything online like a normal 20-year-old thinking about happy things. And for an immortal like me, handling my sensitivity is easy. It's easy to soothe, so I'm confident I can do well anywhere. He even left a message. So don't worry, Mom. Gwang X held his phone, thinking, I'm confident I'll do well. On the bus, the carefully selected individuals gradually began to appear. Meanwhile, he was waiting for the bus to the training facility. Under the scorching sun, everyone around him was drenched in sweat. Now sitting on the bus, Gwang X gazed out the window, happily thinking to himself, summer is here. I finally escaped that scorching heat, and now I can enjoy the air conditioning in this giant bus chartered by the company. Half the bus was filled with immortals, heading to the area to guide the new employees. As he walked down the aisle to his seat, he thought, I couldn't do it at the testing center, but on a bus like this, I can tell who possesses the pure bloodline and who doesn't. Gwang X was deep in thought. Their distinct appearances and the strange auras surrounding them would reveal whether or not they were purebloods. I can sense it through my enhanced 5 senses and an immortal's intuition. He then turned to face Himo. Oh, right. Gwang X's gaze fell on the man right next to him. He was just like that princely guy I sat next to before. And here I am, sitting next to him again. It was the only seat left. He heard the people behind him whispering, a half-blood? What about you? My father's side. They continued to chatter. I bought some snacks. Want some? Yes, thanks. Listening to them, he thought to himself, looks like everyone's already making friends. He then remembered what Yeonho had told him. It's best to make as many friends as possible. Don't judge others based on your first impression, he had continued. Sometimes people who make a bad first impression turn out to be good people, and vice versa. Hearing that, he had replied, yes, sir, I understand. Yeonho came over and patted Gwang X's head, praising him. My son, you've grown so much. He replied cheerfully, I'm even taller than you now, Dad. Leaning against the railing, Yeonho advised him, then don't act like a kid in a grown-up's body. Have you been sleeping well lately? He quickly replied, yes, I have. Hearing that, his father said, you're doing great. I couldn't even manage that when I was your age. Hearing his father reminisce, Gwang X asked, what was it like for you back then, Dad? At that, Yeonho quickly explained, I had trouble sleeping. Everything was fine, except for the fact that I could hear every single sound from the neighbor's house. He quickly asked again, so how did you deal with it, Dad? You couldn't just stay awake forever, right? He thought to himself, shapeshifters use self-control to suppress their instincts. So how do immortals suppress their sensitivity? Seeing this, Yeonho crossed his arms and told him, I used earplugs and an eye mask. I also didn't touch anything that wasn't a microfiber blanket, but none of it worked. So I bought a 1-story house and built another room in the middle of it with soundproof walls. Gwang X was speechless at his father's solution. He thought to himself, talk about effective, something a poor immortal could never do. His father smiled brightly and explained, if you keep suffering from insomnia while trying to function as an adult in society, you'll eventually find a way to solve it. Or you could just go train on a mountain for 3 years. After hearing his words, Gwang X thought to himself, controlling my senses sounds difficult, but for me, it's as easy as breathing. He reasoned in his head, shapeshifters can control all the muscles in their bodies. Controlling my senses is just like folding my ears, or flexing any muscle on my back. He thought, thanks, Mom. Yeonho was preparing to leave. He said, everyone gets sensitive eventually, so just try to find a way to control it. Come on, let's go. Your mother is waiting. He pleaded, just tell me how. Yeonho continued to keep it secret. If you do that, then what's the fun? He pleaded. Come on, it'll be fun. The man then spoke up. That's enough, son. Have a little shame. Gwang X spoke up to greet him, holding out his hand and saying, this is the 3rd time, isn't it? Seeing this, Himo remained completely silent, not responding at all. He continued to explain, the 3rd time we've met. When suddenly the guy spoke up saying, do I know you? Surprised by that answer, he cursed under his breath. This bastard. His mind quickly flashed back to the 2 times they'd already made eye contact, and the guy even tutted at him both times. Seeing his reaction, he began to explain, at the testing center, during the interview, and here. Hearing this, Himo, looking disgusted, replied, this is the first time I've ever seen you. Hearing that answer made him furious. Dad. Just 1 sentence was all it took for me to figure him out. He cursed Himo in his head. It seems His Highness here has the memory of a goldfish. That bastard was rude to me first, so I guess it's okay to call him a piece of trash. Next, he turned his head away, deciding to ignore this rude prince. Should I greet the person sitting behind me? She has blonde hair too, but she doesn't seem to be a pureblood. Gwang X spoke up to greet her. Hello? Miho quickly asked him. You're a half-blood, aren't you? Hearing that, he replied. You can tell? Miho answered in a cold tone. Your father is an immortal, so your senses are dulled. Your family is also quite well off. I bet you only accepted this because there was some condition attached. And you don't even know our destination, do you? Hearing those words, he denied it in his head. No, I accepted this job. Because of my grand dream for the company. Her next words infuriated him. How childish. He cursed silently in his head. Great, I've run into another rude girl. And this one thinks she's Sherlock Holmes. Such amazing detective skills. Gwang X immediately shot back. And what about you? Miho immediately scoffed. And you have absolutely no observation skills. She crossed her arms, a smug look on her face, and said, Immortals are extremely sensitive. That's why everyone sits in the back. away from the windows, because the sunlight between the blinds is incredibly irritating. Even talking like this right now is a nuisance. I know because I'm sensitive. Her words immediately struck a nerve with the people behind them, the kids sitting in the back, snacking and talking. "They're half-bloods," Miho continued, looking down on him. "So shut your mouth! You dense, unobservant bear!" Johan and Gante, sitting up ahead, whispered to each other, "Maybe we should quiet down a bit." Yeah. At that moment, his blood was boiling, his face flushed with anger as he cursed internally. "I want to punch her in the face so badly. I just want to ignore all my parents' advice and deck this girl who thinks she's Sherlock Holmes." Kwang X turned back, thinking to himself. But she's basically right. Dad once said his nickname when they were dating was Mr. Sensitive. If I become like that too, after I adjust, then those guys will have to suffer even more. Kwang X was completely frustrated. But at least I respect other people. A quietness began to settle over the bus, and then the entire vehicle became dead silent. Leaning his head against the seat, he thought to himself, even just opening a bag of snacks would make me their mortal enemy. I'm glad I had breakfast, otherwise... Suddenly his eyes flew open. Wait, this feeling. Something started to appear. "Hello, Kwang X. It's me, your friend. I'm made of nitrogen, methane, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, and many other things. May I come out?" He thought with annoyance, damn it! What kind of timing is this? The soy milk this morning was too much. Kwang X's eyes darted toward the back. All right then. If you want out that badly, he thought gleefully, then go and attack that little miss sitting behind me for me. Suddenly, Miho's nose caught a scent. She immediately pinched her nose. A passing odor nearly made her suffocate. The smell began to spread throughout the bus. Everyone was uncomfortable because of his gas. Miho, trembling with rage, blurted out, You have no manners! His face was filled with the joy of a successful revenge. A few hours after the biological accident, the bus finally reached its stop. Setting his suitcase on the ground, he, along with the others, began to move outside. Kwang X looked around, thinking to himself, where is this? What is this place? Or maybe they rented an apartment nearby? A young man approached him. He called out, Hey, Mr. Muscles! Then asked, What did you eat this morning? The young man next to him chimed in, Were you constipated? Hearing that, he turned his head and saw the two of them, thinking to himself, These must be the two half-bloods who were sitting in the back. He spoke up, saying, It was just a normal bodily function. The blue-haired young man introduced himself. 21, Johan. The person next to him also introduced himself. 23, Banganti. Hearing that name, he started to tease him. You should have been the one dropping the bomb, Hyung. I'm 20, Dukwang X. Really? Whoa. The three of them started walking, laughing and joking together. What's the point of fighting with someone older? Once we get there, it won't mean a thing anyway. He spoke up and said, But still, this is a company orientation. We should at least address people politely, like Gantasi or Kwang XSE. Hearing that, Gante replied, You came all this way without knowing a single thing? He then turned his attention to what was in front of him. This place. A row of buildings appeared before his eyes. It was a training camp. A man's voice boomed out an order to form 5 rows. Hearing this, everyone around immediately scrambled into position. Seeing everyone scrambling for their lives, he just stood there, confused about what was happening. Just how many people are here? There must be at least 100. They sure picked a lot, huh? He walked up to the line, looked at the others, and scoffed. But why do they look so weak? Just then, Jang Mo's voice rang out. You're already out of breath from just this much running? Are you serious? Hearing that voice, Gwangik's attention was drawn to the speaker. Jang Mo appeared, looking badass. The bald proctor from the testing center was there, along with the red-haired guy on his right and the purple-haired girl. Jang Mo began his speech. Next up, all of you need to grow up. We've barely even started, and I'm already extremely disappointed. What do you all plan to accomplish with that pathetic stamina of yours, huh? When I was your age, I wasn't this pathetic. He ordered everyone to turn around. He pointed to the opposite side. Do you see those 3 trees over there? Jang Mo then gave the order. The first 15 people to reach them will run. At his command, everyone immediately sprinted towards the 3 trees. Gwangik glanced over at Gitai and Yuhan. And up ahead were those 2 rude bastards. Everyone's really giving it their all, huh? Gwangik started running at a relaxed pace, thinking to himself. It's no exaggeration to say, I could probably make it halfway there just by hopping on one leg. Perhaps it's because I've already been through so much. That's why a situation like this feels strangely peaceful to me. He calculated his next move. All right then. I'll aim for 14th place. I guess I spoke too soon. Who would have thought the orientation would turn into a boot camp like this? He recalled a conversation with his mother. She had warned him, You must never let anyone find out you're a transformer. Hearing that, he had asked, Then what happens if I get found out? Seon Hai had replied, It would be a huge mess. He pressed on. Isn't there a better reason than that? Seon Hee's eyes, filled with sorrow, turned to him as she asked, How do you think humans view transformers? He answered as images flashed through his mind. A ticking time bomb, ready to explode at any moment. A potential criminal. A homicidal maniac, howling under the full moon. In short, a dangerous being. I'll definitely keep this a secret. Guang Ik sped up towards the finish line, achieving his desired rank and thinking happily to himself. All right, I finished in 14th place, Guang Ik noted. A perfect performance. I'm so tired. Jang Mo glared down at the group and bellowed, "All of you, go home right now! You don't have a single ounce of basic aptitude." Jang Mo's gaze was menacing. Seeing they didn't want to leave, he ordered, "Fine then. Then get on your stomachs and start doing push-ups," he commanded. On beat 1, shout, "I am." On beat 2, shout, "A moron." Hearing those words, he thought to himself, wow, major organizations sure have some strange training methods. The people around him quickly followed the order. 1, I am. But he was lost in thought. When I looked up posts about orientation at these big organizations, everyone said they played games and networked to set up dates. An office getaway, huh? I was so looking forward to it. A moron, 2, a moron, 1, I am. He was counting slower than everyone else. A moron. He panicked internally. Oh crap, I spaced out. Durham shot him a threatening glare. Are you an idiot? You can't even count on beat? Hearing this, he offered his thanks. Thank you for your comforting words. They've really put my mind at ease. Everyone did push-ups together, shouting in unison. 1, I am. 2, a moron. An annoyed black-haired guy muttered a curse. Ah, damn it. Hearing that, Jang Mo ordered, "Everyone, stop." He slowly approached, his voice icy. In my day, this kind of thing would never happen. He stopped right in front of the young man and yelled, "But these days, it seems you kids have no problem cursing right in your instructors' faces, huh?" Hearing that, the guy stammered in fear. "No, it wasn't me." Hearing him yell like that, Jang Mo leaned down and warned, "Don't shout, you half-blood. Do you want to rupture the eardrums of all the purebloods here? Or is there just something fundamentally wrong with your personality, always wanting to bother your comrades?" He roared, "No more shouting. Here, we speak gently. That is the rule." Everyone responded in unison, "Sir, yes, sir." He glanced to the side, cursing internally. "These immortals are so damn weak. I guess I'll pretend to struggle a little more." Jang Mo continued his lecture. "If this were my generation, you all would have been kicked out of here already. Things are much easier now. I'll give you 2 choices." He bent down to ask the young man, "Do you want to leave? Or do you want to accept your punishment?" Hearing this, the man immediately replied, "I'll accept the punishment, sir." The instructor asked again, "You won't regret this." He answered firmly, "No, sir." Hearing that, the instructor praised him. "Good." A sharp crack of breaking bone echoed out. Startled, he listened to the sound. He glanced to the side. What was that? It sounded like someone's arm just got snapped. Guang Ik crouched down. Damn it, I'm so curious. Just a little peek. Just then, someone came over and covered that young man's mouth. Jang Mo spoke up. "I told you not to scream. You didn't listen to me, did you? Back in my day, this kind of behavior was unacceptable." Guang X was horrified by the situation. Is that guy insane? How could he order him not to? Scream right after breaking the man's arm? The pain from a broken arm? I guess you could suppress it, sure, but it would still hurt like hell. Jang Mo stepped forward to announce to everyone, "Now I will inform you of the penalty for breaking the rules here. The punishment will start with a broken bone. So if anyone wants to break the rules, go right ahead. Cursing is -2 points, and screaming is -1 point." He walked toward me, reciting the rules as he went. "Fighting without permission is -5 points. All of you just look at what happened to others and let that be your example." He came closer and whispered to me, "Did you enjoy the show?" Hearing this, the trainee was startled. No, not fun at all. I didn't realize he was watching me." Jang Mo slowly walked to the stairs, continuing his lecture. "Back when I was a trainee, it wasn't like this. You kids these days are so useless." Next, he ordered, "Stand up." The first 15 people were all alike. He then introduced himself. "My name is Lee Jang Mo. From this day forward, you will all call me Instructor Lee Jang Mo." He nodded to the 2 people beside him, and Dharam stepped forward to introduce each instructor. "Instructor Lee Jang Mo will be in charge of your physical training. An immortal's recovery efficiency is directly related to how physically fit you are," she continued to explain. "Right now, all of you here are just rookies, but you must reach a minimum basic level to be able to carry out your duties. The purpose of this orientation is to help all of you reach that level." Hearing this information, I thought to myself, if the instructors are divided into good and bad, I'm guessing this woman is one of the good ones. Her voice is so nice and calm. She then spoke up to introduce herself. "My name is Park Dharam. I will be your technical instructor." Hearing this introduction, Kwang X was confused and began to wonder. Technical? What kind of technique? With that, she returned to her spot. Next, a red-haired man stepped forward. "My name is Kim Han," he said in a threatening voice. "I'm going to kill every last one of you." A heavy silence fell over the room. Dharam stood up to clarify. "That's not what he means. Instructor Kim Han will teach you all how to manage your immortal bodies." Hearing that, I thought with despair, I'm not so sure about that. He really looks like he's about to kill me. Did this company hire a serial killer as an instructor? Jang Mo stepped forward and announced, "If anyone wants to quit, say so now. If all of you leave, I'll be overjoyed." Kwang X listened intently to those words, thinking to himself, If I can just endure this for 1 month, my dream job at a profitable company will be waiting for me. Unless I take a bullet? But I guess I'll be fine. I'm an immortal after all. Who would want to quit? At this point, everyone below was standing in neat lines. Jang Mo spoke again. All right then, new recruits. He then announced, welcome to hell. Jang Mo began dividing them up. 10 people per room. An instructor led Kwang X's group into a room. He ordered, change into your uniforms, then sit quietly and wait. Kwang X was completely dejected. Damn it, this dorm looks creepy, like something straight out of a horror movie. Johan sighed. I'm all sticky with sweat. I'm going to go take a shower. Looking at them, I was secretly relieved. Thank goodness I'm in the same room as Johan and Giti. My gaze shifted to Himo and Miho, full of hatred. I wish I didn't have to run into you rude little imps. I turned to look at the man next to me. The guy beside me is... I asked, hey man, you okay? The chubby guy breathed wearily and replied, I'm fine. I started sizing him up. I guess not all immortals are slim then. My mind pictured the ideal physique. That guy looks like a monster. I glanced across the room. Are those two over there brothers? They look so alike. It feels like their nicknames should be something like Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Kwang X's attention shifted to the girl across from him and that other cute girl. So, a total of 7 guys and 3 girls. Kwang X did a quick head count in his head. Shouldn't they at least have separate rooms for men and women? Where am I supposed to change? A shabby-looking room came into view. Ah, there it is. What nice handwriting for the changing room sign. Miho spoke up. Why don't you be brave and take a look inside? Hearing that, he snapped back irritably. As if I'd want to, Miho said with a scornful voice. Figured as much. You've got no guts. I'm being suspected as a criminal, even though I've hidden the fact that I'm a shapeshifter. Mom, what am I going to do? Minam spoke up shyly. We're going to have to follow a lot of rules. Hearing her voice, he thought, her voice is captivating. Could she be a singer? Himo spoke in a cold tone. From now on, when we're outside, you'd better pay close attention to your body's abilities. If you break the rules, I will kill you. Hearing this, Kwang X thought in fear. He's going to kill me. Please don't be like that. The little prince, Miho, raised his hand in agreement. I agree. Salop, can you just shut your mouth for a second? Johan also raised his hand. I agree, too. Gante quickly followed suit. Me, too. Hearing this, I was horrified. Hey, what happened to all that camaraderie we had 2 hours ago? Everyone quickly chimed in their agreement. I agree! I agree! Hearing those words, he froze. Why is everyone looking at me like that? Himo continued to state the requirements. Breaking the rules is forbidden, and don't forget to brush your teeth. Personal hygiene is the minimum requirement. Everyone immediately spoke up. I agree! I agree! He felt annoyed. He cursed in his head. Hey, I keep myself clean, you know, but whether I hate them or not. These are still the people I have to live with for the next month. He then raised his hand and said, I agree, while thinking to himself, as long as we're still here. I have no choice but to try and fit in. Everyone gathered in the dining hall. The drill instructor spoke. I'll be listening as I eat, so get to it. Each dorm has 10 people. We'll begin in order, from 1 to 110. Kwang X took a bite. It was bland, with nothing appealing about it. He felt like he was chewing on air. The rice was... well, it was just rice. The drill instructor walked around, his tone deep and steady. After the meal, each team will select a team leader. Kwang X paid close attention to that title. Team leader. In that case, I should first observe everyone. Before he could say a word, the girl beside him spoke up. I'll do it. All eyes immediately turned to her. Why? Kwang X's question was drowned out by a chorus of agreement. You have the bloodline of that side after all. Everyone looked at each other and nodded. I agree. Only Kwang X, seemingly unbothered, raised his hand to object. He seems like a real piece of work. A team leader needs to be someone capable of uniting everyone. Therefore, shouldn't we choose someone who's more broad-minded? The girl looked at him with a cold gaze. If you're thinking of yourself, you're making a big mistake. Here, nothing is more important than bloodline, she warned in a chilling tone. Is that simple enough for you to understand? So just ignore his opinion. The team leader has to be one of us. Kwang X mentally gave her a nickname. Ms. Barely resisting the urge to punch someone. Sherlock Holmes was so good at organizing information. I wish I could just grab it from the center of Gangnam with its 8-lane roads. Asterisk. Yeohan beside him whispered, Hey, why are you spacing out like that? Kwang X gave up, not giving a damn anymore. Fine, do whatever you all want. After lunch was over, I thought we would start training immediately, but that wasn't the case. We were issued a few items, like shirts and some cheap shoes. Time flew by, gathering all 100 of us and distributing daily supplies. After showering and resting for a bit, it was time for dinner again. Later, everyone gathered in the dorm room. After learning a few basics, it was bedtime. All eyes were on the screen. A video turned on, and an instructor appeared. I'm sure no one who came here is unaware of our company's name, right? He probably never expected that someone actually wouldn't know. Kwang X turned to his friend and asked, What's the company's name? The two of them stared at each other blankly. You don't know the name? Do I look like I know? Didn't you just assume I knew? Well, everyone's supposed to know. Just as he asked, the company's name appeared on the screen, saving them from having to ask anyone else. Warim Information and Communications. Ah, so that's the name. The instructor began to explain. Fundamentally, this training is a process for selecting official employees for Warim. Warim Information and Communications is a government-funded corporation. Though you aren't civil servants, the work we do for the nation is of a similar importance. Kwang X focused on the screen. Dad said I was taking the civil service exam for Mom's sake, right? In that sense, this is... Recruitment standards have gotten a little lax recently. Back in my day, if you couldn't walk on a knife's edge, you couldn't even dream of setting foot in this company. Hearing the same old pep talk was getting tiresome. He started to drift off. How many times a day am I going to have to listen to this? The instructor's voice on the screen remained monotone and cold. Regardless, you've made it into the company now. So whether you like it or not, you better study hard. A woman's high-pitched voice cut in. That's it? Is that all? The instructor on screen crossed his arms. Well, what else am I supposed to say to a bunch of kids who already know it all? The other person became flustered. Well, that's not what I meant. She leaned into the camera's view. Let's be clear. Warim's objective is to teach everyone how to use their power correctly, and that is all. I hope all of you will keep that in mind. Kwang X pondered her final words. Use power correctly, huh? The video ended just as night fell. The drill instructor shouted, "Everyone, prepare for lights out!" Kwang X lay on his less-than-comfortable bed, but he still felt comfortable and relaxed. Ah, lying down after a shower. This feels so much better. It shouldn't be hard to get a good night's sleep. Only he felt that way. All that rustling and whispering, please be quiet. Why do you keep moving your hands like that? I told you to lie still. Why do you keep making noise? Stop daydreaming. Ugh, I can't get any sleep with this damn sensitive bunch. Johan, lying next to me, is getting annoyed too. Please, just be quiet for a little while. You want to die? Fine, get out of here and drop dead. Kwang X recalled his father's words. If what my dad said is true, the minimum time needed to overcome insomnia is 3 years. But the oldest person in this room is Gun T, 23 years old. Everyone must be at the peak of their sensitivity. In that case, how is this place any different from hell? Johan muttered, dazed. Can't sleep again today, huh? Kwang X chimed in wearily. If we keep being unable to sleep, how are we supposed to live? Suddenly, he had an idea. Well then, there's only one last resort. He mimed, chopping his own neck. Passing out is one way to do it. We're immortal, so there probably won't be any after effects, right? Kwang X added. It's just to get some sleep, you know? Johan turned over, completely unconvinced. Not just anyone can pass out and fall asleep, he mumbled. If you can't control the force, you could be out until the next day. What if you hit too hard and we don't wake up for 2 days? A sharp crack echoed, along with Dai's sweet voice. Sleep tight, sweet dreams. Gun T in the next bed witnessed the whole thing. It was insane. Just one chop, and Johan was out like a light. He stared, dumbfounded, his voice filled with hope. Hey, are you by any chance some kind of human sleeping pill? He asked quietly. Gun T, you want to try? The guy looked conflicted, hesitating. I don't know. All my dreams are about... Before he could finish his sentence, his neck was chopped. Another one down. Everyone else in the room sat up, looking at him. Anyone else want to get some sleep? The words had barely left his mouth when nearly every arm in the room shot up. A series of crack, crack sounds echoed through the dark. Right there, in the small dorm room of his squad, after lulling the last person to sleep, he let out a soft sigh. There, now everyone is asleep. Which means... He turned to the only 2 people still sitting up. The blonde girl shot him a look, her tone laced with contempt. So even a turtle like you has his uses? Well then, I'll be counting on you, Kwang X replied sarcastically. And you think I'm just going to do it for you? But she was completely unfazed. Why not? It's only natural. You and I are roommates. If you help me get a good night's sleep, then at some point I'll help you in return. That's a fair trade, isn't it? Her logic was surprisingly persuasive. Kwang X couldn't deny it. That's true. It does sound like a good deal. But they can only sleep peacefully when the atmosphere is like this. He realized he couldn't refuse. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. He shrugged and stepped forward, his tone conceding. All right. Let me give it a try. Kwang X raised his hand. First, a strike to the neck called the neck chop line. It's a strike in Taekwondo where you use the side of your hand to hit the opponent's nape. He thought to himself gleefully, this absolutely isn't violence. It's the lullaby principle. He glanced over at the last person. The guy was watching him. Kwang X raised his hand, as if in provocation. Next up was Ki Nam. He stared at Kwang X for a long moment, then, without a word, turned away and lay down. Kwang X didn't press the issue. Fine by me. Now time for me to get some sleep. The following night, everyone in Squad 3 slept soundly. Except for one person, of course. Dark circles were clearly visible under Ki Nam's eyes, and his temper had grown shorter. Kwang X was thrilled. I can't wait for tonight. He's been completely out of it since early this morning on day 2. First period was with Instructor Latte. First thing in the morning, he gave a single order. Run! It forced the whole squad on a long-distance run. Everyone was groaning. I'm starting to wonder if this is hell. And this is just the warm-up? A deadpan Kwang X muttered, "I'm exhausted." Basic physical training included weightlifting and running. Second period was taught by a female instructor with short hair. At that point, everyone had to pair up for sparring. The objective wasn't about their immortal bodies. Humans have many weak points, so you must pay close attention. The chin is the #1 weak spot. His partner said with a cocky air, "I've studied wrestling before, you know." Kwang X's expression was as neutral as ever. "Oh, is that so?" The other guy continued arrogantly, "So don't blame me for what happens, no matter how hard I hit you." He suddenly lunged. Kwang X recognized the opponent's move. A tackle. It's a technique where you grab the opponent around their midsection. Kwang X paused for a second. I think..." because his own strike had already landed before the other guy even got close. "Oops, might have overdone it." The instructor was also impressed. "Again." Meanwhile, Kwang X played dumb. "Wow, I guess I'm just really lucky." They were forced to train in numerous close-quarters combat techniques. A tradition for the Immortals is walking on blades. Everyone's faces went pale at the sight of the sharp blades as the instructor coldly urged them to run, but everyone held back. "We have to run on this?" This was probably the first real shock of their lives. Just one look and you could see the blades were 3 centimeters long. Some of the instructor's blades looked like they were 15 centimeters long. Although it was a slight exaggeration to pressure the trainees, I had to pretend to be in excruciating pain. 1 week later, on an evening after another long, harsh day, Kwang X entered with a smirk. "I bet he'll reject a handsome guy like me again today, huh? Guess I'll have to ask twice before I can go to sleep." The sight of him turning to leave without a word made me so excited. But suddenly I noticed everyone was silent. What's going on? What's with this atmosphere? Kwang X hurried over and whispered to his friend Johan. "Why is the mood like this?" Well, if it isn't our sensitive little Sherlock Holmes." The blonde girl immediately shot him a glare. "What did you just say?" Johan hesitated. Last night, while we were sleeping, our team leader, Kinam, couldn't sleep, so he went outside. In the next room, there were others who couldn't sleep either. And they got into a fight. Our team leader beat those guys up. He seems to know exactly what went down, which is why some guys were giving us weird looks today." The moment Kwang X heard that, he understood. That's our guy. Just one glance and he knows everything, huh? A loud sound caught Kwang X's sharp ears. Footsteps were heading this way. Moreover, it wasn't just one person. Keenum hadn't slept for days. His temper wasn't exactly mild. "This is my problem. You guys stay put." A red-haired youth with dark circles opened their bedroom door, followed by others in the same condition. Everyone in the room looked towards the door. The red-haired guy, with listless and annoyed eyes, spoke in a cold voice. "Which one of you bastards in here is Du Kwang X?" The red-haired guy called him out by name, his presence intense. "Which one is Du Kwang X?" Although Kwang X had no idea why he was being called out, he still had to raise his hand. "That's me." He couldn't believe this guy. Did he rat me out? The guy's brows furrowed as he asked again, You're Du Kwang X?" Kwang X, with nothing to hide, answered bluntly, "Yeah, that's me, so what?" The guy's tone suddenly changed. His pale face flushed red, and he stammered like a young girl confessing her love. I want your sleep. I want it too. Kwang X and the others in the room were struck silent. Only Johan covered his face and burst out laughing. With a deadpan expression, Kwang X replied, "I like girls." Realizing his mistake, the red-haired boy hurriedly explained, No, that's not it. I mean your ability to put people to sleep. Doesn't everyone in your room sleep really well?" He begged tearfully, "If this keeps up, I'm seriously going to die, and so will the others in my room." The guys who followed him nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Kwang X couldn't bring himself to refuse. All right, fine, let's go." As the two walked, they talked. Kwang X asked, "But how did you know to find me?" The red-haired guy replied, as if it were obvious, "How could I not? The rumor has already spread everywhere." "A rumor?" The guy laughed and waved his hand dismissively. "You didn't know? Kim Johan is the one who told me." Kwang X was speechless. "So that's why he said he wanted my sleep?" "He said I had to say it that way, otherwise you wouldn't agree to do it. Now I know who's behind this prank. So that's why the culprit, Kim Johan, was just sitting there snickering, huh?" He raised an eyebrow. "So, is it too much to ask?" "Not at all." I raised a hand and said gently, "It won't take much time, anyway." That night, as requested, I gave all the members of Team 1 a good neck chop. Kwang X knocked them out one by one. The next morning, Moon Shin Nam, Team 1's leader, was a lot friendlier. They met in the cafeteria, his face bright and refreshed. He laughed and said, "Man, you've got some magic hands. Last night felt like paradise." Kwang X had never felt so awkward. This guy... People are going to get the wrong idea if he keeps talking like that. Daily training continued as usual, and the instructor was still hurling insults. "Are you all planning to drop dead during the warm-up? Don't you know the meaning of progress?" Jang Mo noticed the person running at the very back and didn't hold back on the insults. At that time, I didn't say it like that. "You immortals these days seem to be unable to control your weight. Is it because you're lazy? If not, are you defying me? Anyone who isn't on time, be prepared." With that, he dashed ahead. The chubby kid stumbled, his steps unsteady, unable to take it anymore. He hugged a tree trunk and threw up violently. Kwang X walked over, concerned. "Are you okay?" The chubby kid waved him away. "Don't worry about me, just go." Kwang X stopped. "I don't care if I get punished later." "What? You're not going to run anymore?" The chubby kid collapsed to the ground, dripping with sweat. "I can't finish it anyway." Suddenly, Kwang X changed the subject. "Have you ever seen Slam Dunk? Is there anyone who hasn't seen that?" With a righteous look on his face, he said, "Become the man who never gives up, my friend." The chubby kid was speechless. Is he kidding me? He doesn't look very hopeful himself. "I'm finished. If you give up here," Kwang X suddenly grabbed him by the shirt, "then you shouldn't have even started in the first place." He radiated a reliable confidence. "I'll help you. Let's finish this today." The sky was a peaceful, clear blue. Kwang X grabbed the chubby kid's hand and pulled him along. "Control your breathing. Just focus on that. Don't drag your feet. You'll just get more tired. If you're exhausted, it's better to just walk quickly to the finish line." The drill instructor waited a long time before finally seeing the two of them appear. Everyone else was already there. He crossed his arms. "What, are you two on a date? Time's up," Kwang X stammered, trying to explain. Well, as a result, they were both penalized with a 5-point deduction. The chubby kid, completely out of breath, gasped, "This is insane!" Kwang X simply said, "No, it's fine. You don't have to apologize. And don't worry about my morale." He comforted him, then started to leave. "I'm fine, really. Don't worry about it. Let's finish it tomorrow." The chubby kid promised, "I will." But he still had his doubts. "Why are you so determined?" Kwang X simply asked in return. "Do you need a reason?" He shrugged and walked away. "Without camaraderie, I'm just an empty shell." The memory of that mysterious person surfaced again. Helping someone who is collapsing and saving someone from drowning doesn't require a reason. That person was probably the same way. That's why I don't need a reason either. Time flew by, and soon it was evening. "So are we putting Group 1 to bed again tonight?" "Of course." As they were changing, Johan mentioned, "Our team leader, Kim Nam, needs to be put to bed too. His dark circles are probably about to reach his chin." Hearing this, Kwang X sounded truly fed up. "I ask him every single night, you know? He just glares at me and turns his back." "Really touching, isn't it? You and him are both incredible," Johan remarked. Just then, Kwang X noticed Gunte looking sullen beside them. He asked curiously, "Hey, why does Gunte suddenly look so drained of energy?" "Oh, that." Johan explained what happened earlier in the cafeteria. Gunte had bumped into the blonde girl, and as he was apologizing, her wallet accidentally fell out, with her ID card inside. "Umiho?" Gunte picked it up and sincerely complimented her. "Your name is Umiho? We've been in the dorms for a week now, and we still don't even know each other's names. I'm Bang Gunte." But Miho's reaction was cold. She snatched her wallet back and walked away without looking back. "I don't care." "And well," Johan finished, "he's been like this ever since." After hearing the whole story, Kwang X didn't know what to say. Kwang X went over and patted Gunte on the shoulder. "Hey man, don't act like you're about to die over something like that. Besides, it's not like we know what she's really like." Suddenly, Gunte spoke up. "Her name is Umiho." "Umiho?" His face brightened and he looked completely dazed. How can someone have a name as beautiful as their face? This made Kwang X question his sanity. Did he hit his head during training or something? He then confessed shyly, "Honestly, the moment I first saw her, I knew she was my type." Kwang X was dumbfounded. "That's not it at all." "It's really not like that," Kwang X insisted. But Gunte was stubborn. "What do you know about Miho?" Kwang X shot back. "Then what do you know about her?" Cornered, Gunte just lashed out. "You're too loud!" Anyway, my feelings are genuine. As Kwang X and his group entered the dorm room, something felt strange. One of the occupants spoke up. "Oh, look, Kwang X is here. Is he the really tall one?" "He's the one who farted on the bus." "If what I've heard is true, after he beats you up, you wake up the next morning feeling totally refreshed. No side effects whatsoever." They all started clamoring, "Can you really control your strength that well?" "I'm the leader of Team 5. Our team is counting on you, and we all want to get your special treatment too. This is Team 4, just the two of us." Kwang X and Gunte silently glanced over at Yuhan. He put on an innocent face. "What? I was just complimenting you." Kwang X cried out in agony. "Just confess, you criminal!" He was stunned by this crowd of people that had gathered. With this many people, how long would this take? Having done this himself, Kwang X knew that to knock someone out perfectly, you have to adjust the force from your arm to suit each person's physical condition. His eyes were filled with panic. The fastest ones wouldn't take too much time. "That's why I'm so busy at night." He has to go to every room and spread the love. At one point, as he was about to say his usual command, the girl who was next in line to be put to sleep spoke up. She asked, "Do you really have to say that?" Without changing his expression, Kwang X replied, "Here comes your dream of Kang Dong-wan and Wan Bin," as he swung his hand down. "I've been going around and blessing the children who can't sleep." By the time I returned to my room, it was already very late. His whole body was aching. Tonight's work was finally over. But then, his eyes, 70% interested and 30% mischievous, glanced at one person. Even so, I still couldn't forget the last thing I had to do. The thing I needed to do. He cheerfully waved at Ki Nam. Same as always today? Get lost. The dark circles under his eyes were pitch black. He silently turned to face the wall, refusing to look at him, but that only intrigued him more. Ah, the same reaction as always. This is why I can't bring myself to hate you. You're just too interesting. So exciting. The more I do this, the more tricks I learn. A sneak attack, straight to the nape of the neck. And as a result, people started lining up and waiting. Afterwards, they would be dragged back by others in their team. Everyone lined up to be knocked out, and then someone would carry them back to their beds. That was the origin of our undying cooperation. Even the instructors couldn't stop this from happening. Because most of the trainees had to rely on my hand to enter the world of dreams, I became famous. They called me by many different nicknames like Sleeping Pill, My Dream, the Divine Arm, and so on. But I don't know when it started. My nickname had become the Woodpecker. Shinan called out to him, beaming like a flower. This change felt completely absurd to Kwang X. These guys have completely changed the names their parents gave them. Shinan held something out. Want some chocolate? Kwang X didn't hesitate to take it. Of course! Even he was a bit hazy on it. I don't even know when this orientation training actually began. Everything was coming to an end. On the screen were disgusting images of monstrous species. The invaders. That's what we call those who come from the black holes. Invading this place. This was what they had to learn in today's lecture. It's been 25 years since the black holes first appeared. In that time, many new invader species have emerged. We use a numbering system to classify them, the instructor explained. The first species are named by number, and the higher the number, the more frequently those entities appear. You can check their appearances and how to counter them on your tablets. The species listed there are the most common ones. You'll be fine fighting them, as long as you are careful. But even immortals can die if they let their guard down. However, there are some invaders that you must retreat from the moment you see them. He warned, the named species, the first numbers represent the species type. After them, there are many variants of the same species. Instructor Jang Mo pointed at the projection screen. This is the Blue Night. When the large black hole appeared during the Great Gate incident, it killed approximately 500 armed combatants. After that came a flood of information they were forced to cram into their heads. It has a hover engine on both its legs and 2 metal wings, and its speed can reach up to 150 kilometers per hour. The blue energy blade that extends from its wing is... Kwang X stared intently at the tablet. The education about the invaders and all the training had led up to this. I get it now. He had also figured out the purpose of this company. Warim Telecom, an administrative department under the Government Security Agency, is a company that enters the white holes and monitors the invaders coming from the black holes. They say that our security agency has reached a new level, but the invaders are still a threat to this society. Therefore, society still needs people to watch over them, and Warim Telecom is just one of the companies that does that job. I guess being an employee there, who would come with a pretty high salary. To be honest, Kwang X smiled faintly, joy glinting in his eyes. I'm really happy to know this. Now I don't need to join the military anymore. Run immediately if you see them. Their name is Nightmare. While the instructor continued his lecture, Kwang X's mind had completely drifted elsewhere. What was Father's reason for sending me here? To put his own son in such great danger? The last class was about to end. There will be a test on this, so memorize everything you see on your tablets. He had no choice but to set his sights on the goal. Why did I ask him that? After getting halfway through the orientation, new training courses were added. The instructor's lecture on the invader species was one of them, and the second was the lectures from the woman with purple hair about combat support items. The short-haired woman introduced the tools. This is called a blood pack. When you're in danger, you just need to open this and stab it into your arm. It will automatically find a vein and supply you with blood, she explained in great detail. This is made in such a way that mix a certain ratio of a stimulant and a sedative and add crushed angel leaves. If you jab it into your arm, the air pressure will force the drug into your body. The drug will enter your bloodstream to enhance your physical abilities. We usually call it a combat drug, but its official name is BB-8. My brain was already fried just listening to all that. Stimulants, sedatives, combat drugs, and a short-haired woman smiling cheerfully while talking about it. If you use the right amount, you won't get addicted to it, but if you use too much, that will become a problem. Even if you're an immortal, you'll have to depend on the drug for the rest of your life. Please don't say such terrifying things with that smile. It's creepy. The instructor added, this was developed in Germany and is called Botton's Blessing or Odin's Blessing. It's one of the most advanced mental cocktails. She bent down to rummage through a medical case. Besides this, we have other types of cocktails here. Their main effect is restoring physical stamina. It was enough to make me think, this is an addict's paradise. Eventually, Instructor Kendo had us start our firearms training. We were each issued a gun. There's a big difference between practice and a real fight, so all of you need to pay close attention and learn this properly. After that, we went back to running, weightlifting, technique drills, and improving our body's flexibility. I was still helping Kang Purium, and the others joined in to help too. Let me push you from the back. I'll support you from this side. Once we adapted to this chaotic environment, the number of people I had to force to bed at night decreased. Eventually, everyone became strong enough to pass the running test. Even Kang Purium could do it on his own. It was a result to be proud of after all that effort. And just like that, a month passed, and all our training was complete. One evening, the instructor gave a speech. No one quit because of the difficulties they faced, and every single one of you. Instructor Kang Mo gave a rare smile. Congratulations on becoming new employees of the company. Everyone was amazing! Everyone cheered in unison. Wow, it's done! It's finally over! This is awesome! Hey, Hubie, we're new employees now! Kim Han stepped forward. All right, everyone, listen up. I will now announce the results of your training period. They are calculated based on everyone's performance during training and on the tests. You will be assigned to different departments based on your rankings. In addition, there will be a reward for the top 3. Amid the cheering, I was also satisfied. There's nothing better than money in this world, I thought, listening quietly. Next, we will announce the 3rd place winner. I figured I could already guess who would be 1st and 2nd. But who was 3rd? Could it be me? A name was immediately called out. Ki Hyomin. The guy looked overjoyed. Whoa! But his face was completely unfamiliar. Who is that? He was practically a background character in this story. He immediately went on stage to shake hands with the instructor. Awesome! Thank you, instructor. If you apply to any department you wish to join, you will be given special consideration. He got even more ecstatic. Then the security team! As he said that, my eyes filled with suspicion. He seems a little dim-witted, but somehow he managed to rank 3rd. Instructor Kim Han spoke again. Next, in 2nd place. A name that couldn't have been more familiar was called Trong Ki Nam. Whispers immediately spread through the crowd. I know him. He's from that bloodline. My eyes followed him as I remembered a time when I didn't understand all this talk. From that bloodline? What's that supposed to mean? Johan had even questioned my identity. Are you sure you're an immortal? The more I look at you, the less sure I am. He then tilted his head back and downed his drink. Trong Ki Nam is from a main lineage with a pure blood type. This just confused me more. I don't see the connection. Is he from some rich family or something? That's part of it. Gunte added, it depends on the type of blood they have. High-class purebloods usually recover faster and have sharper senses than mixed bloods. That's why they're so skilled. They're better at controlling their immortal bodies than others. But this rude little prince here is the purest of the purebloods among all the immortals in this country. He belongs to one of the top 3 pureblood lineages. Those were the facts about Kinam. He wasn't careless at all. He never slacked off and always ranked high in training. You could really say he was a natural-born genius. I understood that type of person. He was certainly talented, but his determination to improve was even more impressive. A truly perfect model student. I don't like the guy, but he totally deserved his rank. Gunte suddenly had a realization. Wait, if that talented Trong Ki Nam isn't number 1, then that means I could be number 1, right? The other 2 looked it away, pretending not to hear. Oh, my poor Gunte. You're delusional. Yep, even though he's not my brother. Gunte got mad. Is this what you call friendship? Instructor Kim Han began to make the announcement, but I had already figured it out. If Trong Ki Nam is 2nd, then she must be 1st. Sure enough, the next name he called was Yu Miho. Her expression was ice-cold as she stepped forward. I had my own assessment of this person in my head. A rude little Sherlock Holmes. She has no empathy and is blunt. And Gunte is already a massive simp for her. Miho. Of course it's Miho. But she's incredibly intelligent during team exercises. She wouldn't hesitate to ditch her teammates if it meant protecting her own score. After just a few months with her, I had a pretty clear picture of what kind of person Miho was. She'd tell anyone who tried to make conversation that she was only focused on training and had no time to talk. Definitely the difficult book-smart type. But I guess that's how she was able to get results like these. What an annoying guy. Everyone give him a hand. All eyes were on the 3 of them, standing together on the stage. And now, for some reason, I feel like I'm connected to them. But what's the name of the guy who placed 3rd? Guang X's face was a mask of shock. The commendation was brief. You now have free time until 2 p.m. tomorrow. People started asking each other, what should we do now? Let's party. Do they sell alcohol here? Suddenly, someone called out to him. Intern number 48. The 2 exchanged a few brief words. Do you have a moment? Yes, I do. Then let's talk. Meet me in the smoking room later. He didn't refuse. Yes. As his 2 friends were still standing around looking lost, another instructor called out to him. Number 48. This is my phone number. Contact me when you get out. Guang X took it. Ah, all right. The other 2 immediately crowded around him. Hey, what's up? Did you do something wrong? He shrugged. Why would you jump to that conclusion? Then Guang X looked down at the piece of paper in his hand. I get it. He probably wants me to come see him. There were a few things I'd been curious about from the start. He'd been holding on to this thought ever since he first arrived here. This orientation is supposed to measure the potential of the trainees to cultivate the best immortals. But is that really all there is to it? Could the person who planned this orientation have had other intentions? Shin Nam cheerfully patted his shoulder. I was able to sleep soundly this whole time thanks to you. Then, the girl with purple hair gently handed him a piece of paper with a note. Let's meet up when we get out. A bunch of other people came over too. Let's keep in touch. See you at work. We'll see each other soon. In just a moment, he had met almost everyone from all the teams. So many of them. Even so, Gwang X was quite satisfied. It would have been crazy to aim for first place. But I don't need something like that. There are more important things. Johan asked, did you run into trouble on your way to the store or something? What could have taken you so long? Gwang X puffed up his chest. It's because I'm so popular. The other two rummaged through the bags and complained, I don't like these potato chips. You didn't get any mint chocolate? Gwang X snapped, you little... Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice rang out. Everyone turned to see a man in glasses and a suit standing at the door. Who knows how long he'd been there? Even Gwang X hadn't noticed him. Not even when he got this close. We didn't even notice him until he spoke. This must be a concealment ability. A man called out from the doorway, and another person walked in and spoke. I hear there are many talented individuals in this training batch. I forgot to introduce myself. A dignified, middle-aged man appeared before them. I am the chairman of Warem Telecom, Nam Myung-jin. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Everyone shot to their feet at attention. They all saluted in unison. Nam Myung-jin. I remember seeing his name on the board. Gwang X had looked this person up before. Born in 1973. Has military experience from serving 5 years in the emergency response team. He's a first-generation immortal, one who has lived through the currents of history. From the horrifying years of the past to the present day. Now, he is one of the top 10 immortals in the current forces of the Korean branch office. That, in a nutshell, was this man. His power was undeniable. Why doesn't everyone sit down? It's not like I came here to punish anyone. He walked in. Did you have fun during training? One person shouted. Yes, sir, the chairman chuckled. Nonsense. What's so fun about that? Getting yourself injured only to heal it again. It hurts like hell. Gwang X could feel Guntae nodding vigorously behind him. He held back a laugh. Poor little Guntae. His office life is going to be rough. Myung-jin laughed cheerfully again. I like your honesty. But you should learn to work hard. It'll save your life. Trust me. That's some hard-earned advice from your senior. Myung-jin's voice turned serious. Dong Kim Nam. He immediately stood up. Yes, sir. He walked over to shake the chairman's hand, who encouraged him. You did well. Kim Nam replied flatly. Thank you, sir. Then he called another person. Umiho. She quickly stood up. Yes? And again the same pleasantries. I have high expectations for you. Thank you, sir. Meanwhile, Gwang X was completely baffled. What did he come here for, just to say hello? And to see the faces of the first and second place winners? He zoned out, his head in the clouds. He must not have anything better to do. Suddenly, to his complete surprise, Chairman Myung-jin called his name. Employee Ju Gwang X. He was bewildered. Juji? The chairman asked. You carry soul blood, don't you? Yes. His sharp, cold eyes scanned him from head to toe. Not bad. After that, he asked a few questions that weren't really related to the training, and Gwang X just answered honestly. Finally, the chairman concluded with the sentence, That's great. You're at the perfect age to be worked hard. Gwang X cursed internally. Great my ass, I want to get a girlfriend. And why does he keep staring at me so intensely? The pressure is killing me. Then he winked at him and left him with a parting sentence. I'll see you at the office. Well, I'll be going now. I'll leave a gift, but don't get too drunk. He left Gwang X with a bewildered expression. Johan bombarded him with questions. Who are you? Are you the chairman's secret son or something? Why was he talking to you and even winking at you? Even I don't understand. I don't think I've ever met him before. Maybe he just likes my style? But isn't he married? That brings up something else. I heard he has a daughter. Where did you get that information? It wasn't on the information board. Later, a crate was pushed in. The instructor sighed. This group sure is lucky. If you guys are completely passed out tomorrow morning, I don't care. So don't overdo it. Gwang X was ecstatic. Whoa! Is that alcohol? I was just getting disappointed that we had a party with no drinks. Guntae shyly ran over to try and flirt, because he was immediately and flatly rejected. No. He stubbornly tried again. Since today is our last day, would you like to have a drink with me? She didn't even look at it. Alcohol makes people stupid. I don't want a drink. Gwang X looked at the pathetic guy's face and sighed. You again? Including this time, that makes 16. And he's been shot down every single time. The chubby guy opened the crate and exclaimed, This isn't alcohol. It's blunt, a kind of mental cocktail that immortals love most. When you drink it, it dulls your senses and makes you dizzy. So even immortals suffering from insomnia can fall asleep. The effects of this can are really valuable. Guntae passed them out. There are exactly 10 cans. I guess that's one for each of us. Each of these cans costs 3 million won. Here, take one. To think he brought a gift worth 3 million won. He's so cool, isn't he? Clank. The sound of a can falling. Kim Nam had just chugged a can. His face was flushed as he glanced over at someone, to be precise, at Dai. "You ill-mannered bastard!" He was still stunned. Is he talking to me? Then he lay down and fell into a dead sleep. Everyone was amazed, since even the slightest noise from others would usually wake him up. "It's damn effective, you petty bastard." At the same time, he asked, "Are you bullying him or something? Did you deliberately shuffle your slippers to the bathroom in the middle of the night?" Kwang X was nonchalant. "No, it's just a habit I learned from Kim Nam." Gunte was smug. "See? I knew it." Suddenly, Miho appeared before him, her voice flat. "Thank you for the past few days." Kwang X wasn't surprised. "Oh yeah?" Suddenly, Miho handed him a piece of paper. "This is to repay you. Only you are allowed to read it." Gunte was startled, his voice trembling. "No way, it can't be right." Kwang X replied, "What did I tell you?" He slicked his hair back smugly. "I told you to give up, didn't I? I'm just too popular. But look at your face. How could I possibly give up?" He left him with one last line. "You should take a good look at your own face first." Gunte couldn't accept it. He threw his head back and chugged his drink. "I can't stay sober anymore." Yuhan chuckled. "You two are just as bad as each other." Kwang X went to a spot with no one around and opened the piece of paper. Inside was information provided by Miho. "Nam Myungjin has a habit of selecting a few new employees and observing them very closely. If you pass, your career path will be very smooth, but if you don't, you will obviously face many obstacles. You should be careful. Don't tell anyone else about this." So that was the information. At the same time, he was surprised. How does she know about this? He realized there was something she wasn't saying. What's more, her attitude wasn't quite what he'd thought it was. The way she wrote about him, along with his habits. It made me feel like she knows much more than this. She must have something she can't talk about. Come to think of it, she isn't as unapproachable as I thought. He returned. "Congratulations!" "It's not a love letter," Gunte demanded. "Then let me see it." "No, you petty bastard, no." "I mean, thank you. Thanks for being considerate." "That's not it, you idiot." After that, the two of them ate their fill and lay down on their beds. "This is the life." That bastard Kwang X also chugged his can of blunt and fell into a dead sleep. On his first day of work, Kwang X arrived in front of a skyscraper. He was assigned to Security Team 3. He walked in and looked around. Security Team 3 seems to be over here. His eyes fell on a man with a scowl on his face, his cold gaze fixed on the newcomer, him. Is he the manager? I should probably say hello. Just then, a curse word made him freeze. His eyes darted toward the person who made the sound. It was a man with dark circles under his eyes who smiled at him. Then he picked up the phone receiver, and his attitude completely changed. He shouted angrily, "Are you kidding me? A new employee? Are you serious?" For a moment, the entire room was filled with only his curses. "You know what the situation in our department is like. And you still send a new employee over? You can't do this. How many times have I told you? Send someone with experience. Or at least someone who ranked first or second. This isn't what management is supposed to be like, is it? Damn it. I didn't even cuss or anything." The atmosphere was tense. Someone finally spoke up. "Have a seat." It was a woman with short red hair. Her eyes were still glued to the screen after he sat down, bewildered. She stood up, walked to the manager's desk and asked, "What should I do with him?" He spun his chair around and started cursing up a storm. "I have no idea." The woman turned back to ask about the senior who had just been screaming into his phone. "Senior?" He sighed, completely fed up. "I don't know what she wants either." Well, they made the decision on their own. "Fine, I'll train him." Kwang X was lost in thought. It felt like they'd assigned him to the wrong place. Then, someone called his name. Regardless, he immediately snapped back to attention. "Yes, I'm the new employee, Yu Kwang X." The red-haired woman approached. "I'll tell you what you need to do." She tossed a file at him. "This is the Warren Personnel Register. You have until tomorrow to memorize all of it, then burn it." "Tomorrow?" She warned him. "Unless you're going to the bathroom or to eat, don't you dare get your ass out of this chair." Then she pointed them out. "This is the security phone, and this is the regular one. When you answer the security phone, you say you're the new guy so-and-so, something, something, and then you transfer the call to whoever they want to talk to. The transfer instructions are on the phone. When you get a regular call, you're not even allowed to mention the Immortals, the Transformed, or anything about the company's work. Got it?" Kwang X got the general idea of what to do. "Yes, I understand." With that, the woman grabbed her jacket and left. "Well, I'm off to investigate then." Kwang X silently did what he had to do, overhearing snippets of conversation from his colleagues. "I heard you landed a new guy. You're Ki Nam? It's a pleasure. The entire day was like torture. If you want to know anything, just ask me. I'm the manager's secretary." "What about lunch?" The sound of a cup slamming onto a desk. 3 people gathered around. Kwang X asked gloomily, "Let me ask you guys something. Do you get yelled at?" The other 2 seemed completely unfazed. "Yeah, of course we do." But there was something Kwang X just couldn't understand. "But why?" Johan hummed. "Well, I did hear something," Gunte joked. "Looks like it's time for the new guy's Pity Party podcast. Apparently it was Nam Myungjin who decided which department you'd be assigned to." Kwang X wondered, "The boss I report to, that was him?" Johan continued the conversation. "That's right. He usually listens to employees' requests for department transfers, so this isn't the first time he's gotten involved in something like this. But the problem is your department. It's a well-known division in the company. External Security Team Number 3 of the Operations Headquarters. Operations work is already pretty dangerous, but external security is only for the best of the best. Johan's voice slowed down. The work is that difficult, and you need a lot of skills to meet the job requirements. And External Security Team Number 3 is infamous for... Kwang X thought to himself, is this just some old trick to haze the new guy? But no, the truth was far more shocking. Killing the new employees. It was like a lightning bolt from a clear sky. Johan knew a fair amount of rumors and gossip about the external department. That manager of Security Team Number 3 is a real piece of work. He runs the new guys so ragged they gave him a nickname, the Crusher. I also heard there's a senior who looks exactly like a panda. Apparently he's become a real hotshot in the company recently. It seems he's incredibly skilled. I mean, who in the industry doesn't know him now? Every year people are trying to scout him. Kwang X looked surprised. Really? Inside, he marveled. So it wasn't just me who thought he looked like a panda. He pressed on. What about the other senior? At this, Johan looked mysterious, covering his mouth. Senior Trong Ah? She's definitely one of them. Hearing this, Kwang X froze. One of them referred to the superhumans created by the effects of the elixir. The elixir was a drug created by ordinary humans. It was meant to suppress the powers of supernatural species. However, it was a forbidden substance. The elixir was the product of experiments combining magic with alchemy. They were conducted secretly without government oversight. No one knew if those experiments had been tested on humans, or what other inhuman acts were hidden behind them. Kwang X's expression darkened. But the truth is, that senior is still one of the transformed. Johan launched into another story. Her nickname is the Cleaver. Every new recruit that comes in gets chopped to bits by her before being sent to the Crusher. Kwang X was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, Avenger? The panda told me that I'm CEO Nam's Avenger. Trong Ah's footsteps halted. But the Crusher, the Cleaver, and the panda, they're the Avengers, not me. His expression was ice cold as he uttered the words. His two friends' eyes went wide, sensing the deadly aura behind him. From his seat, Kwang X also felt something strange. He slowly turned his head, only to be met by a death glare and the bone-chilling voice of Trong Ah. I told you not to pry into my identity. She left, while the three stubborn boys just stood there with their jaws on the floor. The waiter set down a sizzling hot dish. His eyes seemed to say, it's on the house. Oh, those fragrant, perfectly roasted peanuts. Kwang X began to sing the song of his life. Looking at you kids, I knew I was a goner. Online, people often joke with each other. When you're having a hard time at work, just tell yourself that labor is a joy, labor is glorious. And that's exactly what Kwang X told himself. In times like these, just imagine that you're the prince of an oil-rich superpower. But your father, the king, has forced you to experience the life of a commoner to train you. Whether other people like you or not, doesn't matter. The landline rang. It was Kwang X's responsibility to answer calls. Yes, this is the new employee, Du Kwang X. The person on the other end spoke up. Yes, this is Park Gwang-soo from Support Team 1. Can you connect me to Kim Jong-ah? Since it was his first time, he was still tongue-tied. Manager Park Gwang-soon of Support Team 1 speaking. Jong-ah corrected him. It's not Park Gwang-sun, and it's director, not manager. Ah, right. Immediately, he would hear two familiar phrases from the other two, hopeless and useless. He laughed like a madman in his head. You damn commoners. I'm a prince, got it? It took me a few days to memorize the ledgers and make calls. When my team members were absent, the other seniors taught me a lot. My reputation spread with the nickname the Woodpecker, but I got used to it and wasn't embarrassed anymore. Thanks to them, I finally understood what a real team is like. I also gathered intel on my team members, including Lee Yong-bong, the manager, and a pureblood. But to me, that pureblood didn't act like a superior at all. His only redeeming quality is being the best close combat fighter in Warem. In every aspect, he's triple S-rank, naturally making him the most elite warrior in Warem. Kwang X cursed internally, and yet the only phrase that ever came out of that guy's mouth was useless. He's no different from a bastard. No, he corrected himself. A cockroach you can't kill no matter how many times you smash it. What a cruel way to put it. The second person, nicknamed Panda, is Lee Dong-hun, the deputy manager and a mixed blood. He's always mocking me, saying I'm terrible at fighting and shooting. Kwang X was sick and tired of hearing it. Hey, are you that bored? Don't you have anything better to do? But he's actually a genius in charge of the personnel tower when incidents occur. I can't help but admire him, even though he's always complaining about wanting to quit. But he always gets the job done flawlessly. Kwang X knows the guy is hopeless in a fistfight, so he gave up on that long ago, and now focuses all his energy on using his brain. That's when he's at his most silent. I'm not exactly sure how he's so damn good at what he does. I just know he really likes watching anime. The last person in the trio is Kim Jong-ah. She's both an employee and a superhuman. She's one of the rare normals in Warem, but she's also incredibly talented. She's in charge of giving me documents. Here, study this. Kwang X also knew she was from a special ops unit, with A-rank close combat and B-rank sniping skills. He had a pretty good impression of her. He even thought that she was the pinnacle of humanity. Besides Manager Lee Yongbong, she's one of the most outstanding employees here. However, she has zero humanity. She's like a rock. Those were his conclusions about his new superiors. People say talent comes with flaws. So what if you're good? Kwang X seemed to realize a universal truth. It doesn't matter when your personality is absolute trash.